Chapter 2253. Please. Han Bing stood up coldly and raised her hand, indicating for Jean Xin to leave first. The Seven Skills Sect disciples also stood up. After the Seven Skills Sect disciples followed Han Bing out of the guest hall, Zhen Minghui whispered, "Captain Chui, what should we do?" "What else can we do? We can only face the enemy head-on." Chui Hongshan sighed and waved his hand. "The sword cultivators are approaching. Let's go take a look." "Yes." Dui Chiming replied and followed Chui Hongshan out of the guest hall. However, Xiao Hua sat there motionlessly. "You're not going to take a look?" Chui Hongshan frowned and said, "Are you really going to hide behind the Seven Skills Sect disciples?" "Yes. Why not?" Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said, "My cultivation is shallow, so of course I have to hide behind them." "Yes." When Chui Hongshan saw that Xiao Hua was so shameless, he didn't say anything and walked out of the guest hall. Dui Ling walked at the back and actually gave Xiao Hua a thumbs up. Evidently, he was praising Xiao Hua's calmness when facing a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator. "Tisk, you're still laughing even now. Wait until you see thousands of sword cultivators. You won't be able to laugh anymore." Xiao Hua looked at Dui Ling unhappily and closed his eyes to refine the medicinal power of the Azure Spirit Pill. He released his Buddha's perception and saw the sword cultivator dozens of miles away. Was there need to look? Moreover, swordsmen who were at most at unsheathing sword cultivation were not Xiao Hua's type. Even if there were over 1,000 of them, they still wouldn't be able to stop Xiao Hua. When Chui Hongshan and the others left the guest hall, there were already disciples of Rooster Crow Mountain who came to greet them, leading them to follow Jean Xin and the others who had already flown to the peak of Rooster Crow Mountain. The peak of Chicken Crow Mountain was also covered in deep snow. Although it was not too high, it was enough for one to clearly see the surroundings. Chui Hongshan gradually flew higher and released his divine sense. He could not find any traces of sword cultivators. There were also some small dots in the distant horizon that he could not see clearly. "Fellow Taoist Jean, what's the situation?" Chui Hongshan asked in a low voice. Jean Xin furrowed his brows and shook his head slightly. "I don't know either. The disciple on guard duty didn't send another message. Most likely, he had already died. Even with my spiritual sense, I still can't find any traces of the sword cultivator." "Oh." Chui Hongshan had a thought and asked, "Since there are still no traces of the sword cultivator, why don't we?" Chui Hongshan did not continue, but Jean Xin clearly knew what Chui Hongshan meant. He smiled bitterly. "Last time, there were several hundred sword cultivators. The disciples of my Chicken Crow Mountain who went out to ask for help barely managed to escape from their encirclement. Now that there are over 1,000 of them, I'm sure they already have the intention of killing us in a single strike." Hearing that, Chui Hongshan became even more confused. He asked again, "Since the sword cultivators have already attacked Chicken Crow Mountain, why didn't the Valley Master ask for more help? Will we allow them to attack a second time?" "Alas, fellow Taoist Chui, there is something you don't know." Jean Xin was still smiling bitterly. "Right now, the sword cultivators are coming in large numbers. There are dangers everywhere. Where we find extra people to help? Moreover, according to the previous records in the valley, sword cultivators don't harass our cultivation families too much. Even if they attack, they only attack once. If they succeed, they succeed. If they don't, they retreat. They are just low-level swordsmen who are seeking a breakthrough. There is no need for them to fight us to the death. There's something strange about today." Chui Hongshan nodded. "That's right," Jean Xin replied. "Last time, the sword cultivators surrounded my Chicken Crow Mountain. After fellow Taoist Han came, although there were only 10 of them, he joined forces with me and the elders of my Chicken Crow Mountain to defeat the swordsmen with the highest cultivation. They then retreated, just like what was recorded in the records. Who knows why they came back? How many disciples of your valley are there?" Chui Hongshan asked again. "About 400. Jean Xin understood Chui Hongshan's meaning and replied, "There were only about 300 swordsmen from before. However, there were several third-grade swordsmen. I was afraid that my Chicken Crow Mountain wouldn't be able to handle them. so I sent my disciples out to ask for help. Fellow Taoist Jean, since that's the case, with so many sword cultivators attacking, why don't we break through the encirclement now? If we wait for them to come closer, I'm afraid we won't have another chance. Cui Hongshen suggested bluntly. Isn't it the same if we wait for the sword cultivators to retreat and then come back? Hee. Jean Xian laughed. Fellow Taoist Cui, it's easy for you to say. Let's not talk about the fact that the sword cultivators have already surrounded us. It's already too late for us to leave. Besides, fellow Taoist Cui, you're not in charge, and you don't know the difficulties of being in charge. It's easy for us to retreat, but difficult for us to come back. Behind John Xian's smile, there seemed to be some difficulties. It seemed like he didn't want to surrender Chicken Chrome Mountain to someone else. Of course, if fellow Taoist Cui wants to leave, it'll depend on your luck to break through the encirclement now, Jean Xian said with a smile, then looked towards the horizon again. At that moment, the sword cultivators were already close enough to be seen with the naked eye and divine thought. Although he had heard the disciples report that there were more than 1,000 sword cultivators, these 1,000 people were scattered around Chicken Crow Mountain. They weren't too densely packed and weren't too terrifying. However, Cui Hongshan understood that as long as he led the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples out, they would immediately attract the attention of the sword cultivators. Many sword cultivators would then gather to attack him. The Imperial Thunder Sect's first team was just a piece of cake in the eyes of these 1,000 sword cultivators. Even if there were hundreds of sword cultivators, they wouldn't be able to fight back at all. What? Are you scared? Han Bing's face was slightly pale, but she still sneered. I already told you not to come over. Now, you regret it. Humph. Cui Hongshan sneered. What is there to be afraid of? I'm still waiting to see how the 7 Possibilities sect fights against the sword cultivators. Don't worry, there are no weaklings in my 7 Possibilities sect. Even if there are tigers in the mountains, there will be tigers in the mountains. Since I said so, I'll definitely do it. Han Bing's gaze was fixed in the distance, and she replied without any trace of politeness. I'd like to see how you deal with this. Cui Hongshan's tone was exactly the same as Xiaohua's. Let's go. We'll go out and take a look. Han Bing waved her hand and said to the 7 Possibilities sect disciples. Fellow Taoist Han, Jean Xian said anxiously, the sword cultivators are ferocious. In my opinion, we should rely on the defense of Chicken Crow Mountain to resist for a while. When the sword cultivators' attacks are ineffective, we should retreat first. Ha ha ha. If I don't go out and fight, won't I be looked down upon by others? Han Bing laughed loudly and led the 7 Possibilities sect disciples out, rushing out through the restriction opened by Jean Xian. Seeing that there were cultivators flying out of Chicken Crow Mountain, more than 10 sword cultivators gathered together and welcomed them. Moreover, the other sword cultivators maintained their formation and steadily approached Chicken Crow Mountain. These 10 sword cultivators were dressed in similar clothes, and they were very simple. They were all standing on flying swords. The person in the lead had a red face, and his cultivation was at the 3rd layer of the unsheathed sword realm. The flying sword under his feet was like a panel, and flames were rolling on it. He was extremely arrogant. Just wait and see. Han Bing shouted loudly and ordered the crowd. Her figure flew forward, and, at the same time, she clapped her hands, and a purplish-red bamboo segment appeared. Under the activation of her transcendence energy, a red brilliance flew out. The brilliance entered the air and immediately turned into layers of bamboo shadows. While it absorbed the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual chi, it surged towards the red-faced sword cultivator. Ha ha ha! Seeing this, the sword cultivator laughed loudly. He formed a sword seal with his hand and pointed his finger. Go! The flying sword under the swordsman's feet immediately accelerated and actually turned into a ball of fire dragon, rushing towards Han Bing's Dharma treasure. Amidst the rumbling, there was actually a kacha sound, and the sky was filled with crimson red. The purplish-red brilliance was broken by the fire, and a lone bamboo segment flew into the air and a deep cut landed on it. Hiss! Seeing this, Han Bing could not help but suck in a breath of cold air and secretly cried out in pain. His Dharma treasure was of the wood attribute, and the swordsman not only had a strong attack power, but also had the fire attribute, which was his nemesis. Therefore, although the swordsman's strength was inferior to his, he still had the upper hand in the exchange of blows. Fight! Han Bing was still somewhat eager to fight. She rubbed her hands, and more than 10 green balls of light flew out, attacking the sword cultivator. The sword cultivator sneered. He opened his mouth, and a small flying sword also flew out. It was as nimble as a swimming fish, and quickly pierced through the dozens of balls of light. He watched as the balls of light turned into specks of fluorescent light and scattered in the air. Before Han Bing could shout out "break," the spell in her hands also stagnated in midair. This flying sword was really too fast, and this flying sword was really too sharp. Han Bing's spell was not finished yet. Stab! At this moment, to the left of the red-faced swordsman, a tall and thin swordsman shouted coldly. A thin sword also flew out from under his feet, and with a shake in the air, it immediately turned into 3 different shapes, and quickly pierced toward Han Bing's face and chest. Damn it! Han Bing cursed. The bamboo segments in her hands swung, and several bamboo shadows blocked the flying swords, while she quickly retreated. Shameless swordsman! Following an angry roar, a Foundation Establishment stage cultivator from the 7 Skills sect clapped his hands, and a palm-sized yellow shield appeared in his hands. He channeled his Dharma power, and the shield grew to a few feet in size, flashing brilliantly as it flew behind Han Bing. As expected, 2 of the 3 sword shadows were knocked down by Han Bing's bamboo segments, but the topmost sword shadow escaped from the bamboo shadows and directly pierced towards the shield. At this moment, Cui Hongxun and the others released their divine perception and looked over. With a muffled sound, the sword shadow pierced into the shield. The shield's brilliance became extremely bright, and the sword's radiance was also flickering incessantly. After a few breaths, the sword's radiance finally disappeared, and the shield's brilliance also stabilized. The 7 Skills sect's Dharma treasure finally blocked the flying swords. Good. A Rooster Mountain disciple beside Cui Hongxun could not help but shout. However, before he could finish his words, the red-faced swordsman's flaming sword whistled as it charged over again. With a loud bang, the shield that was a few feet in size rapidly shrunk like shattered glass, turning into palm-sized fragments that floated in the air. The 7 Skills sect's Dharma treasure was actually shattered by a sword cultivator's attack. Let's go. Seeing this, Han Bing did not dare to stay any longer. With a wave of her sleeve, the 7 Skills sect disciples hurriedly flew back to the Rooster Mountain's defense. The red-faced swordsman did not chase after them, but kept his flying sword and continued to call for the other sword cultivators to slowly approach the Rooster Mountain. Chapter 2254. Everyone from Rooster Crow Mountain had seen the brief battle between the 7 Skills sect disciples and the sword cultivators. When Han Bing and the rest returned, no one asked. When Han Bing flew in front of Zhang Xian, she glanced at Cui Hongxun and ignored him. She asked Zhang Xian in a low voice, "Valley Master Zhang, the sword cultivators are very aggressive today. How's your Rooster Crow Mountain's defensive array? Can it withstand their attacks?" "Yes, it shouldn't be a problem." Zhang Xian smiled apologetically. "I can't say for sure, but the array was meticulously set up by your sect's elders. It should be able to withstand the sword cultivators' attacks." "All right." Han Bing raised her hand and said, "We'll rest for now. When the sword cultivators are tired from their attacks, we'll go out and fight again." "Yes, that's what I think too." Zhang Xian smiled. "As long as we can hold on for a few days and nights, the sword cultivators will retreat when they see that their attacks are hopeless." Then, Zhang Xian ordered many of his reliable disciples to guard different parts of the array. Looking outside the array, thousands of sword cultivators had already surrounded Rooster Crow Mountain. It was only then that the scale of the thousands of people could be seen. They were so densely packed that they blocked the sky. Attack! A loud and clear voice sounded. The thousands of sword cultivators activated the flying swords under their feet at the same time. Each of them revealed their flying sword's original appearance. Without transforming, they stabbed at the Rooster Crow Mountain's defenses. At that moment, a layer of faint brilliance flickered on Rooster Crow Mountain. It was like a light barrier that covered the entire mountain. When the thousands of flying swords stabbed the light barrier, they emitted sparks. The entire Rooster Crow Mountain was like fireworks at night, abnormally brilliant. It's a little strange. Although Xiao Hua was sitting in the guest hall, he had been releasing his Buddhist perception the entire time. He could see everything clearly. When he saw that Rooster Crow Mountain's defenses were so tight, he could not help but be surprised. The scale of this Rooster Crow Mountain doesn't seem to be comparable to Zhongling Villa. Even Misty Mountain is slightly stronger than it. But why is the defensive array so powerful? Could it be that there's something unusual in this Rooster Crow Mountain? When he thought of that, Xiao Hua's heart stirred. He thought to himself, could it be that thing? Seeing the sword cultivators' flying swords attack, Cui Hongshan's face turned pale. Han Bing's cultivation in the middle stage of Foundation establishment was forced back by 2 sword cultivators. Their Thunder Sect's disciples were at most in the early stage of Foundation establishment. How could they be their opponents? There were over 1,000 of them. It wasn't a few hundred people, nor was it a few dozen. There were only 10 people in the Thunder Controlling Sect's first team. If they were spat on, they would drown. Rumble. There were a few faint, loud noises. It was the flying swords of the 2 swordsmen at the 6th level of the Drawing Sword realm piercing the light shield. The brilliance of the light shield was somewhat dim. Fortunately, the 2 swordsmen seemed to be tired after stabbing a few times. They stopped, and the brilliance of the light shield gradually recovered. Zhang Xian didn't panic too much. He only released his divine sense and observed the state of the entire defense. After waiting for 4 hours, Zhang Xian waved his hand again, and a small silver flag appeared in his hand. He waved it from time to time, and rays of light flew out as if he was repairing the array. The cultivators of Rooster Crow Mountain and the disciples of 7 Possibilities Sect and Imperial Thunder Sect were also waiting for Zhang Xian's orders. This was especially so for Cui Hongshan. It was his first time being the leader of a small team. He didn't understand how to command the disciples in battle, so he wanted to see how Zhang Xian would take charge. Seeing that night had arrived, what was originally a lively scene of birds returning to their nests had now become the clamor of sword cultivators baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. A dozen sword cultivators dressed in the same attire stopped their attacks and formed a straight line. Under the command of an older swordsman, they urged their flying swords to continuously attack a point at the top of Rooster Crow Mountain. The sword flowers kept appearing at the same point. Quick! Cui Hongshan was a little anxious. He pointed his hand and said, Valley Master Zhang, there are a dozen swordsmen attacking the same place. Don't let them break the array. Hee. Zhang Xian glanced and laughed. There's no need to be afraid. If a normal array is attacked at the same place, it will break the restriction. This is also a normal method to break an array. However, my Rooster Crow Mountain's array isn't afraid. After the attack, the restriction will automatically heal. It won't break because of continuous attacks at the same place. Indeed, after the sword flowers appeared, the brilliance of the array did not weaken because of it. Instead, the dermic power fluctuations on it became more vigorous. Seeing such a situation, the dozen sword cultivators also gave up. After resting for a while, they formed a formation again and attacked the light barrier together. The light barrier glowed again. These sword cultivators are really persistent. They know that they can't break it, yet they are still so respectful. Cui Hongshan frowned slightly. Yes, it's a little strange. Zhang Xian nodded as well. If it were a normal record, these sword cultivators would know that this place is very difficult to deal with. They would have left long ago. This was the second time Zhang Xian had said that. Clearly, he did not understand either. How long can Rooster Crow Mountain's array last? Han Bing muttered to herself for a moment and asked softly, "Let me tell you, fellow Han, if these sword cultivators attack without rest, it can last for 10 days. Jean Xian looked at the night sky and explained, "Of course, as long as they rest for a while, this array will naturally absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and repair itself. It can also buy time." "Only 10 days?" Han Bing's expression changed slightly. She asked anxiously, "Is Rooster Crow Mountain's spirit stones insufficient?" Jean Xian smiled bitterly. He looked to his left and said softly, "My Rooster Crow Mountain is not above the spirit vein. It's only because of that thing here that we established our foundation here. This array cannot rely on that thing, and can only be supported by spirit stones. Take a look, fellow Han. This array protects the entire Rooster Crow Mountain. The amount of spirit stones it consumes is extremely shocking. Although my Rooster Crow Mountain is rich, it can't withstand the attacks of thousands of sword cultivators for 10 days and 10 nights. Sigh, thousands of sword cultivators. This is indeed something that I did not expect." Han Bing sighed. Could it be that those sword cultivators have received some news? If we look at the current situation, it is indeed a little strange. Jean Xian smiled bitterly. "However, my Rooster Crow Mountain is not well known in the country of Shi. It seems that those sword cultivators can't possibly know anything about it, right?" "I hope so," Han Bing pondered. After a moment, she asked, "When should we attack?" "Tomorrow at noon." Jean Xian waved the small flag and used his divine thought to check for a moment before answering. At that time, the array will have consumed 30% of its energy. We will go out to meet the sword cultivators and let the array absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to recover some. "All right." Han Bing waved her hand and said, "We will go back and rest for now. Valley Master Jean, inform me tomorrow at noon." After Han Bing left, Cui Hongshan stood for a while and asked, "I don't understand. Why don't we go out and meet the enemy now? Why wait until noon tomorrow? Please tell me, Valley Master Jean." It's actually very simple." Jean Xian did not want to answer, but seeing that Cui Hongshan was also a helper of the Imperial Thunder Sect, he smiled and said, "These sword cultivators have just arrived today. They're like tigers in a spurt of energy. If we fight with them today, the ones who will suffer losses will naturally be us cultivators." "Of course I know this." Cui Hongshan smiled and said, "I think there might be other reasons." "Ha ha ha." Jean Xian laughed and said, "Fellow Taoist Cui is really considerate. I won't hide it from fellow Taoist Cui. At noon tomorrow, my Chicken Crow Mountains array will only have 70% of its usual power. It can no longer withstand a full blow from a nascent soul cultivator, so we need to let it recover." Cui Hongshan was shocked. The Chicken Crow Mountains array is so sturdy? It can actually withstand a nascent soul cultivator? It's nothing much. Jean Xian smiled and said, "Isn't the Imperial Thunder Sect's array something that even a nascent soul cultivator in the late stage can't break?" Back then, the seniors of my Chicken Crow Mountain had great foresight and spent a lot of effort to set up this array because they were afraid of being harassed by sword cultivators. Moreover, the sword cultivators in the past all retreated because they couldn't break the array. Cui Hongshan was really shocked by the foundation of the Chicken Crow Mountain. At the same time, he thought of the words that Han Bing and Jean Xian had just said. "Fellow Taoist Cui, you all should go and rest too. I will have my disciples arrange a quiet room for you all," Jean Xian urged. "The Seven Skills Sect's disciples have already fought once. Shouldn't your Imperial Thunder Sect also fight with us tomorrow?" Of course." Cui Hongshan cupped his hands and flew down the foothills with the Chicken Crow Mountain disciples. When the Chicken Crow Mountain disciples arranged a quiet room for Cui Hongshan and the others, who would be able to calm down. After all, they were really going to fight with sword cultivators tomorrow. Especially after seeing the attacks of thousands of sword cultivators and the defeat of a mid-stage Foundation establishment cultivator like Han Bing, the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples felt even more uneasy. "Captain Cui, there will definitely be a battle tomorrow." Zhen Minghui looked at everyone and said softly, "In this subordinate's opinion, since we have already obtained the token of the Chicken Crow Mountain, we don't really need to fight to the death tomorrow. As long as we find an opportunity, we can escape early. What do you think, Captain?" Cui Hongshan glanced at Zhen Minghui and said with a bitter smile, "Senior brother Minghui, do you think that I don't want to escape with my junior brothers? Didn't you see the sword cultivator's stance? They didn't plan on letting the Chicken Crow Mountain disciples escape at all. Besides, we don't have any flying magic tools. Even if we escape, it won't be our turn. I'm afraid that the Seven Skills sect disciples are much faster than us. That Seven Skills sect seems to be in some kind of shady business with the Chicken Crow Mountain." Zhen Hua said softly, "Look at how they're sending flirtatious glances at each other. There must be some unspeakable filth." "Ha ha, senior brother Zhenhua. That's not how you use flirtatious glances." Dui Ling laughed loudly and pointed at Zhenhua. "How could Senior Han bing flirtatious glances at Senior Zhan Xian?" "Ha ha." Everyone laughed when they heard this. The tension in the quiet room was reduced by half. Yes, the Seven Skills sect is a tool refining sect. I'm afraid that the Chicken Crow Mountain is a cultivation sect affiliated with the Seven Skills sect. This isn't considered strange in the Dawn Rain continent. Cui Hongshan nodded and said, "This is a matter between them. It has nothing to do with my Imperial Thunder sect. Tomorrow we will... Actually, there's no need to be so nervous." A lazy voice sounded. Chapter 2255. Everyone looked over and saw that it was Xiao Hua, who had been sitting behind them with his eyes closed. From the looks of it, the sword cultivators might be coveting something from Pheasant Crying Mountain. Tomorrow, we will go out and fight to see how things go. If it really doesn't work out, we will immediately escape. We are not disciples of Pheasant Crying Mountain, so the sword cultivators might not care. Furthermore, they only want something from Pheasant Crying Mountain and won't care if others escape. Xiaohua, the problem now is that we can't outrun the sword cultivators. Dui Ling said very seriously. She had always ignored Xiaohua and called him martial uncle, just like how Xiaohua dealt with Cui Hongshan. We have to run even if we can't. We have no reason to work for Pheasant Crying Mountain. Xiaohua scoffed. Up until now, Pheasant Crying Mountain still hasn't been honest with us. Who knows what secrets they have? That's right. I also feel that there must be a big secret. Dui Qiming echoed. Otherwise, the sword cultivators wouldn't have gathered here after retreating last time. What if the disciples of Pheasant Crying Mountain go to Sky Patrol City and report that the disciples of Imperial Thunder Sect left them in the lurch? Ming Mao blinked and asked. That's right. This is the most difficult. This is what I am worried about. Cui Hongshan sighed. My Imperial Thunder Sect cannot lose face. Tisk, Xiao Hua sneered. They have to be able to escape. Junior brother Xiao, they can't escape, but we can. Qiu Su also sighed. Since we can escape, they can also escape. That's right. Cui Hongshan nodded. What I'm thinking about is how to fight tomorrow to save our lives. I only hope that the sword cultivators aren't coveting something from Pheasant Crying Mountain. After besieging them for a few days, they will retreat. We, the direct disciples of Thunderclap Palace, do have a way to attack, Zhenhua suggested. However, we need to work together and practice a lot in order to succeed. That's right. The female cultivators of DUI Thunder Sect also have this kind of combined attack technique. DUI Qiming nodded. Hence, everyone started to discuss the two kinds of joint attack techniques. Cui Hongshan and Zhen Minghui nodded and exchanged a glance. Cui Hongshan said, since there are more disciples from Thunder Palace, let's use their joint attack technique. Let's not waste any more time. Don't count me in. Another untimely voice sounded. What are you doing? Xiaohua, do you not want to live anymore? Cui Hongshan stood up and said angrily. Hongshan, DUI, Qiming hurriedly pulled Cui Hongshan back and smiled. It's just one night. We might not even be able to familiarize ourselves with each other. One more Xiaohua or one less Xiaohua doesn't make a difference. If he doesn't want to train, then so be it. You. Cui Hongshan was so angry that he sat down and stopped talking. Junior brother Xiao, if you don't want to train, then go and meditate. Dui Qiming smiled and said, just stay behind us tomorrow. Nothing will happen. Xiao Hua looked at everyone. Everyone had different looks in their eyes. Some were puzzled, some were disdainful, but fortunately, no one was taking joy in his misfortune. Hee, little brother just feels that it's useless to do any joint attack technique now. Tomorrow, as long as we stand back to back and form a circle, we won't be in too much danger. Xiao Hua smiled and said, then let's wait until the crisis here is over before discussing the joint attack technique. When everyone heard this, their eyes lit up. However, Cui Hongshin sneered and said, you think you're the only smart one? Can't this Cui and the others think of it? Even if we form a circle, we don't have to worry about our backs. However, don't forget that behind us is Chicken Crow Mountain. How can there be a sword cultivator? Even if we form a circle, if a 5th stage sword cultivator flies over with his flying sword, who among us can block it? All right, this is Zhao's suggestion. Just wait and practice. As Xiao Hua spoke, he turned around and walked out of the quiet room. He entered a quiet room nearby, opened the restriction, and actually closed the door to meditate. This vile spawn. Cui Hongshin was very angry. We're discussing how to fight and how to survive, yet he's mocking and ridiculing us, giving us blind ideas. Tell me, how can this Cui not be angry? Everyone was silent. Previously, Xiao Hua was a bit strange, so everyone endured it. However, what he said today was incomprehensible to everyone. AI, Captain Cui, everyone has their own ambitions. Zhen Mingwei looked at Dui Qiming's helpless expression and smiled apologetically. Perhaps Xiao Hua has his own ideas, or perhaps he has his own way to survive. He can survive? Even monkeys know how to laugh. Cui Hongshin snorted. Just foundation establishment. Speaking up to here, Cui Hongshan paused slightly. After all, there were 3 aura refining disciples who hadn't built their foundation for a long time here. How would he say this? Let's continue with the joint attack technique. Dui Qiming hurriedly said. After all, the more proficient we are, the more we can survive. Not to mention that the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples were practicing their joint attack techniques. Xiao Hua was sitting in a quiet room, calm and collected. The 10 people formed a circle, which was within his range of assistance. Even if 9 people were attacked at the same time, he could still rescue them. AI, there's no other way. Xiao Hua sighed. The higher you stand, the further you can see. How can others know that what you say is the most correct? This young master has to go and see what 7 Skills Sect and Chicken Crow Mountain are exchanging glances with each other. If it's that thing, then this young master can't come here in vain. As he spoke, Xiao Hua's figure gradually disappeared like an ink painting fading. It was the devil technique that Zhang Qingxiao gave Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua flew out of the quiet room and immediately arrived at the valley of Chicken Crow Mountain. He released his Buddhist awareness and looked around. Unexpectedly, Zhan Xian wasn't at the foot of the mountain. There was only another early-stage foundation establishment cultivator from Chicken Crow Mountain holding the command flag. At this time, outside Chicken Crow Mountain, many sword cultivators were still attacking without any pause. The brilliant sword light and all kinds of flying swords attacked the light barrier one after another. It was even more dazzling than during the day. Just a moment ago, you were still guarding this place. My Imperial Thunder Sect left for a while, and then you left by yourself. If there's nothing fishy, then who would be convinced? Xiao Hua coldly snorted and raised his eyes to look inside Chicken Crow Mountain Valley. These places were all on top of the stone walls. There weren't any stairs or passageways, so they could only fly over. At the entrance of each stone wall, there were 2 disciples of Chicken Crow Mountain guarding it. However, how could this be enough to stop Xiao Hua? Xiao Hua landed on the ground, and with a flash, he entered the ground and directly flew towards the stone wall. Oh, this Chicken Crow Mountain's great formation is indeed tight. Xiao Hua landed on the ground and soon encountered a layer of restriction. This restriction was the same as the formation outside the mountain. Xiao Hua naturally understood that it was the Great Formation of Chicken Crow Mountain. Following this restriction, Xiao Hua went up the stone wall. When he saw another thin layer of restriction, Xiao Hua knew that this was the restriction on the stone wall. He didn't dare to be careless, fearing that he would destroy the entire Great Formation. After circling around, he discovered that the restriction on the stone wall wasn't connected to the Great Formation. Moreover, it was a kind of warning formation and not a defensive formation. Choosing a seemingly ordinary place, Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out several spirit talismans. Soon after, he hit them on the restriction. Once the spirit talismans came into contact with the restriction, they immediately merged with it. Rise! Xiao Hua was very confident. With a grab of his hand, several spirit talismans flashed with a strange brilliance, following which a gap the size of a person appeared in the restriction. At the same time, an ear-piercing sound and a strange magic power fluctuation were emitted. Hee. Xiao Hua didn't find it strange at all. His figure flashed and flew into the gap. With a grab of his hand, several spirit talismans fell into his hand, and his figure disappeared again. In just a short moment, two figures flew over with extreme speed. It was Han Bing and Zhang Xian. It's here. Zhang Xian pointed with his hand and looked nervously at the place where Xiao Hua entered. That's not right. Han Bing's divine sense swept over and frowned. The restriction here is intact. There aren't any traces of damage. That's right. Zhang Xian was also puzzled. He scanned with his divine sense again and said strangely, I'm afraid Valley Master Zhang is too nervous. Han Bing laughed loudly. She spread out her divine sense again and looked forward a little. Zhang Xian scratched his head and said with a smile, That's right. Right now, there are thousands of swordsmen attacking outside Rooster Cry Mountain. I can't help but be nervous. That's strange again. Han Bing was a little puzzled. How could sword cultivators know that Rooster Cry Mountain has the Tai Green Light Mother? Did the news leak somewhere? I'm also puzzled, Zhang Xian said with a bitter smile. Ever since my Rooster Cry Mountain received the help of Seven Skills Sect and discovered the Tai Green Light Mother, we have been very low-key. All the cultivators in the country of Shi don't know about it. How could sword cultivators know? Could it be that we're being overly suspicious? Han Bing said doubtfully. I hope we're wrong. Zhang Xian smiled bitterly. If sword cultivators find out that there's the Tai Green Light Mother here, I'm afraid they'll turn out in full force. That's right, Han Bing said with a smile. This Tai Green Light is really too important to sword cultivators. Their flying swords have been tempered by the Tai Green Light Mother. Who knows how much more powerful they are now? Unfortunately, this Tai Green Light Mother is too small. Only 2 flying swords can be tempered at a time. Zhang Xian said regretfully. Also, for some reason, this Tai Green Light Mother is getting weaker by the year. Supposedly, the Tai Green Light Mother is the mother of innate gold chi. It can extract an extremely small amount of innate gold chi from the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to repair itself. This isn't considered a pity. It's a pity that our 7 Skills sect can't move the Tai Green Light Mother to the Lianyan Sea. Otherwise, Valley Master Zhang wouldn't have to live here and live in fear every day. Han Bing laughed. I'm afraid no one in the Dawn Rain continent knows that the disciples of Rooster Cry Mountain have long belonged to 7 Skills sect. Senior Brother Han. You can't let the disciples of Imperial Thunder sect hear this. Zhang Xian said with a smile. Otherwise, the first team of Imperial Thunder sect will be a laughing stock. They actually died for 7 Skills sect. They're going to die at the hands of sword cultivators tomorrow. How would they know about this? Han Bing sneered. They're just early-stage Foundation establishment brats. Yet they want to come to Rooster Cry Mountain? They really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. All right, Valley Master Zhang, the next time you send a messenger disciple, you must be careful. You must not make any mistakes. If you like this work, you're welcome to vote for it at Qidian. Come. Chapter 2256. Yes, I understand. Jean Exan cupped his hands and said, "However, tomorrow, are we not retreating?" "Yes, the pavilion master has ordered that this Tai green light mother is extremely important and cannot be lost." Jean Exan smiled bitterly and said, "If the pavilion master has such intentions, he should have sent more disciples." Cough, cough. Han Bing coughed twice and said, "How would the pavilion master know that the sword cultivators would send so many swordsmen? Furthermore, if more disciples from our 7 skills sect came, everyone would notice Chicken Crow Mountain." Jean Xian shook his head and turned around, saying, "Since that's the case, we still need to discuss tomorrow's battle. Even if the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples have to risk their lives to block some sword cultivators and make some sacrifices, our Chicken Crow Mountain disciples cannot be lost. Furthermore, tomorrow is only a test. The real retreat will be 3 days later. Tomorrow, we cannot let the sword cultivators see that we are not sincere in fighting." "Isn't that easy?" Han Bing said as she walked. "We just need to defend Chicken Crow Mountain with our disciples. But I don't want to lose more disciples tomorrow." Jean Xian's voice came from afar. So that's how it is." Xiao Hua's figure was concealed. He was several feet away and could hear the two's words clearly. "They are actually using our Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples as sacrifices. Furthermore, this Chicken Crow Mountain is actually 7 skills sect's territory. How can I not take this Tai green light mother? However, if the 7 skills sect can't take it away, I'm afraid I can't either." Xiao Hua was somewhat hesitant. Then he sneered. "Humph. Even if I can't take it away, I'll still bring disaster to you and make you regret it endlessly." Then, Xiao Hua did not reveal himself and flew into the depths of the restriction. The interior of the cave was tangled and complicated. Xiao Hua was almost dazzled. After much difficulty, he finally found a secret place. This was a fist-sized black hole that was completely unremarkable. There was nothing special about it in his divine sense. No one would pay much attention to it if they flew past it. However, Xiao Hua could feel it because an extremely sharp aura was faintly emitted from the fist-sized black hole. That aura was emitted by the Tai green light in the dream execution dream. Oh, that's strange. When Xiao Hua executed his earth movement technique with the intention of entering the black hole, he noticed that the surroundings of the black hole were extremely hard, and it was actually even harder than metal. So, he was utterly unable to enter it. Then, Xiao Hua flew into the distance and entered the stone wall, heading towards the black hole. However, as soon as he came into contact with the black hole, he was blocked by a layer of metal. Earth escape couldn't work. I understand. Xiao Hua immediately realizes this so-called Tai green light mother has long since condensed the surrounding area into gold and stone because it released the Tai green light. Naturally, he couldn't enter through the earth escape technique. Only the metal escape technique that yours truly didn't know could be used, right? No wonder the 7 possibilities sect's cultivators couldn't move it away. They must have been blocked here. This fist-sized black hole indeed baffled the cultivators of the 7 possibilities sect, but could it baffle Xiao Hua? Xiao Hua kept all the storage bags and other items into his space. His entire body gradually shrunk and turned into a long and thin line. His body floated and shot into the black hole like an arrow. Xiao Hua used a transformation technique and flew into the black hole. Before he could stop, a reddish-yellow light pierced into his eyes. Xiao Hua hastily closed his eyes in shock. However, the yellow light in front of him was still as dazzling as before. At the same time, Xiao Hua immediately released his divine sense in an attempt to see the situation around him. However, a sharp pain came from his divine sense, comparable to the pain of Xiao Hua's primordial spirit being torn apart. Ouch! Xiao Hua was afraid of hurting his divine sense and quickly retracted it. Then, 10,000 rays of red and yellow light shot out from under his feet like 10,000 swords, piercing towards his eyes. Pooh! Xiao Hua wasn't sure if this was what he felt or what he really saw. He didn't dare to be careless. He opened his mouth, and the red and green execution dream flew out. It drew a sharp arc in the air and flew towards the rays of light that were piercing towards him. However, as soon as the execution dream entered the red and yellow light, Xiaohua immediately felt an extremely warm and familiar feeling. It was as warm as the sun. It was the light that shone on the execution dream, and Xiaohua's primordial spirit felt it. An inexplicable joy and a strange calmness came from the execution dream. Xiaohua's primordial spirit also felt a kind of reliance, a reliance that would no longer be a threat. Thus, the originally sharp red and yellow light immediately became gentle, as if a ball of warm light had wrapped around Xiaohua. Good boy. This is really the mother of the Tai green light. Xiaohua came to a realization. He knew that it was the Tai green light on the execution dream that allowed him to escape the power of the innate gold qi. Xiaohua tried to open his eyes. Although the yellow light was still glaring, it was more like the warmth of a mother and less cold. Although Xiaohua was already prepared, seeing the endless illusion around him, he still cried out in shock. Inside the yellow light, there were many flying swords, many weapons, and all kinds of other things. They were constantly changing, as if it was another world, almost sucking his gaze in. Following Xiaohua's cry of surprise, his gaze had already penetrated far into the illusion, and he almost couldn't retract his gaze. Xiaohua hurriedly closed his eyes, feeling dizzy. He felt that his entire body had fallen into the illusion just now, and his body had already turned into one of the billions of weapons. When his body stopped spinning, Xiaohua felt his limbs and knew that he hadn't fallen into the illusion. Only then did he carefully open his eyes, not daring to face the red and yellow light directly. At this time, Xiaohua's execution dream had already flown down a few feet and was revolving around a golden light spot smaller than a green bean. The endless red and yellow light came from this golden light spot. From time to time, there would also be strands of green light shooting out. As soon as these green lights shot out, they were immediately absorbed by the two flying swords near the dream executioner. Needless to say, these two flying swords were the flying swords refined by the Seven Skills sect. This golden light spot was the mother of the Tai green light. What? What mother of the Tai green light? Xiaohua saw this light spot and suddenly realized, isn't this the origin of metal? But then Xiaohua shook his head. No, the origin of metal is incomparably sharp, just like the origin of fire. It can't exist in this world in any form. It can only merge with the void. At this time, Xiaohua's primordial spirit, which was studying the ghost cultivation method and other jade slips, transmitted a trace of enlightenment. Immediately, Xiaohua understood. This is the innate gold essence. Not only can it produce Tai green light, but it's also a rare item used by the ancient celestials to refine magic tools. Good heavens, it's probably the spiritual tool used by the ancient celestials to refine magic tools. I haven't even seen a spiritual tool before. Xiaohua was practically beaming with joy. Xiaohua was still too shallow. How could a spiritual tool compare to an item used by the ancient celestials? If he had the ability, he could use this item to refine a spiritual treasure or even a heavenly spiritual treasure. However, Xiaohua only knew about spiritual tools, not to mention heavenly spiritual treasures. He hadn't even heard of spiritual treasures. But how do I take away this innate gold essence? Xiaohua kept the dream executioner and also the two flying swords without any trace of politeness. His eyes didn't dare to look directly at the innate gold essence. He scratched his head and thought, I don't know if my primordial spirit method will work. Since he couldn't release his divine sense, he probably couldn't store this item in his storage bag like ordinary cultivators. Only Xiaohua's space could store this item. Let's give it a try. Xiaohua thought that a thief wouldn't leave empty-handed. He released his primordial spirit to store the innate gold essence into his space. As expected, his primordial spirit didn't feel the sharpness of the reddish-yellow brilliance. Once it touched the innate gold essence, it immediately felt like it was being cut apart. Fortunately, It wasn't the first time Xiao Hua split his primordial spirit, so he could endure it. Store. Xiao Hua clenched his teeth, and the yellow light that filled the sky immediately disappeared. The innate gold essence was actually successfully stored by Xiao Hua into his space. Along with the pitch-black darkness before Xiao Hua's eyes, an extremely sharp strand of sword qi swept past, and then it vanished. However, Xiao Hua didn't care. After all, this yellow light was an illusion, and that sword qi was just one of them. No matter how sharp it was, it wouldn't attract Xiao Hua's attention. At this time, Xiao Hua could only endure the pain of his primordial spirit. He happily threw the innate gold essence into an extremely remote corner of his space. Fortunately, although the golden light of the innate gold essence was powerful, it was obedient under the light of light tracing after entering Xiao Hua's space. It wasn't as arrogant as it was in the outside world, and Xiao Hua's spiritual herbs and other items weren't damaged, following which Xiao Hua released his divine sense. At this time, there was nothing in the space of Tuzhan. It was empty. Let's go. If we delay any longer, I'm afraid we'll be caught like a turtle in a jar. Xiao Hua thought in his heart, but then he spat again. Damn it, it's catching me in a jar. Naturally, when Xiao Hua returned to the quiet room, without anyone noticing, Zhan Xin of Chicken Crow Mountain and Han Bing of Qiqiao Sect didn't notice that the Tai Green Shi mother they valued so much had been taken away by Xiao Hua. And the disciples of Imperial Thunder Sect, who were busy practicing their joint attack techniques, didn't know that Xiao Hua had left and returned. After swallowing a few green spirit pills, Xiao Hua continued to close his eyes and rest. He was determined. Whoever asked him, he cultivated here and didn't leave at all. Of course, until noon the next day, no one came to question him. Instead, he received a communication talisman from Cui Hongshan. Hearing Cui Hongshan's voice, Xiao Hua didn't wait for him to finish speaking and broke it. He stood up and walked out of the quiet room. Sure enough, in the quiet room next door, everyone was waiting in formation, each of them nervous. Seeing Xiao Hua come in, Cui Hongshan said coldly, "How is it? Have you decided? Are you going to fight with us, or are you going to stay in this Chicken Crow Mountain?" Chapter 2257. Is there a difference? Xiao Hua replied indifferently. If you want to be a coward and get the protection of Chicken Crow Mountain, then stay here, Cui Hongshan said bluntly. If you want to be a qualified disciple of Imperial Thunder Sect, then follow us into battle. Whether you live or die will depend on your luck. Whether I go or not, I'm still a disciple of Imperial Thunder Sect. I won't stop being a disciple of Imperial Thunder Sect, just because of your words. Xiao Hua sneered. Actually, I don't want to risk my life for Chicken Crow Mountain. However, since you all are going, I have no reason to not go. Otherwise, you all will really think of me as a coward. That's right. Dui Ling immediately clapped. I told you, Xiao Hua will definitely go. Even if we die, we will die together. Go. Xiao Hua glared at her and said angrily, "If you want to die, then go die by yourself. Don't drag me along." Hee. Dui Ling wasn't angry at all. He covered his mouth and laughed. And, since he decided to go, then you should have stayed last night. Seeing that Xiao Hua had decided to go into battle, a rare smile appeared on Cui Hongshan's face. He said, "Your brain is active, so it will be easier for you to cooperate with us. In a while, when we fight, you'll have a higher chance of survival." Xiao Hua originally wanted to retort sarcastically, but when he saw everyone's solemn and stirring expression of "the wind is bleak, the water is cold, the brave warriors have left and will not return," he also felt respect in his heart. He waved his hand and said, "You all fight to your heart's content. I will be behind you." Ha. Ming Mao was the first to laugh. She shouted, Xiao Hua, you really have the nerve to say that. I didn't practice any joint attack techniques. Naturally, it's best for me to hide behind you all," Xiao Hua said indifferently. "Don't listen to Xiao Hua's nonsense." Cui Hongshan waved his hand. "On the battlefield, who will care about him? If he doesn't fight, how can he let us protect him? Let's go. Immediately, Chui Hongshun and Junming Hui led the way out of the quiet room. Following the route they entered yesterday, they arrived at the foothills of Chicken Crow Mountain. At this moment, the sword cultivators were still attacking. However, they had already changed into two groups, one group resting and one attacking. Hee, fellow Daoist Chui, you really came? At this time, Zhang Xan was already wearing a thin layer of armor, which was faintly glowing. It was obviously a protective Dharma artifact. When he saw the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples all come forward, he said happily, the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples really live up to their reputation. This Zhan is impressed. If it wasn't for yesterday, Xiaohua would have thought that Zhang Xian was speaking from the bottom of his heart. However, when he looked at Zhang Xian's smile, he felt endless darkness and cunning. We are all disciples of the Dao sect. Sword cultivators are our common enemy. How can I not help? Chui Hongshun cupped his hands and smiled. It's best if you can contribute. Another voice rang out. I'm just afraid that you won't be able to contribute much strength. He needs help from others. Needless to say, this voice belonged to Han Bing from the Seven Skills sect. Chui Hongshun did not hold back at this time. He did not know whether he would live or die in a while. Who would give face to others? Although this Chui is in the early stage of the foundation establishment stage, I may not be like some people who were defeated in a single exchange and ran back like a stray dog. If it wasn't for the swordsman's mercy, I'm afraid some people would have died today. Han Bing was not angry at all. She pointed her finger and said, It's all nonsense now. Let's see the truth on the battlefield. If fellow Chui has the guts, would you like to make a bet with this old man? What bet? Chui Hongshun was stunned. It's nothing. In a while, we will definitely fight together. Let's see who comes back first. The one who comes back first will definitely be the loser. As for the loser, there's no need to punish him. He just needs to kowtow to the winner in front of everyone and call himself a coward. Chui Hongshun only hesitated for a moment before he sneered. Do you think this Chui is afraid of you? Let's slap our palms together and make an oath. As he spoke, Chui Hongshun extended his palm without hesitation. Oh! Han Bing was stunned for a moment before she laughed. She also extended her palm and slapped Chui Hongshun's palm, saying, I didn't expect that the Imperial Thunder sect, which has always convinced people with reason, would have such a straightforward person. With a pa sound, the two's palms collided. However, Chui Hongshun's gaze landed on Dui Qiming's face. Dui Qiming was not surprised. Instead, there were traces of encouragement, pride, and happiness in her eyes. This Han Bing from the Seven Skills sect is really vicious. Xiaohua sighed. Xiaohua thought, when will we fight, and how will we fight? Chui Hongshun withdrew his palm and used his divine perception to scan the area. He asked, will we attack from all four sides of Chicken Crow Mountain at the same time? Are you in such a hurry to die? Han Bing laughed and said, if you want to die faster, then attack from all four sides. Fellow Chui. Zhang Xan smiled apologetically and said, in another hour, all the disciples of my Chicken Crow Mountain will have gathered. We will attack and let those sword cultivators know the power of our Dao sect disciples. Then, he hesitated for a moment and said, of course, we cannot attack from all four sides at the same time. We can only attack from one side. Why is that? Chui Hongshun clearly did not understand. Zhang Xan pointed and said, if we attack from all four sides at the same time, then these thousands of swordsmen can attack us at the same time. However, if we attack from only one side, then only the swordsmen from one side can fight with us. The swordsmen from the other three sides do not know that we are attacking in full force. They must be afraid that some disciples will break through from other sides, so they will not dare to mobilize all their swordsmen. Oh, I see. Chui Hongshun suddenly understood. What? Xiaohua was clear in his heart. If the swordsmen from the other three sides all attacked, then needless to say, the sword cultivators were not coveting the Tai green light of Chicken Crow Mountain, but merely attacking. If the cultivators from the other three sides were left behind, then what else was there to say? They simply wanted to obtain the natural golden mother in their hands and not let the news leak out. After another hour, the disciples of the Rooster Crow Mountain had all gathered. Jean Exine glanced at them and extended his hand, taking out a storage pouch from his bosom. He handed it over to a disciple beside him and ordered, "Go, distribute the yellow talismans in this storage pouch. These yellow talismans will allow you to freely enter and exit the restriction of Chicken Crow Mountain for 2 hours. After 2 hours, they will lose their effect. These yellow talismans only need to be activated by the Heart Sutra of our Chicken Crow Mountain." Yes, that disciple accepted it and flew down to distribute the yellow talismans. Then, Jean Xian took out some yellow talismans and gave them to Cui Hongshun and Han Bing, saying, "These are specially made yellow talismans for 7 Possibilities Sect and Imperial Thunder Sect. The effect is for 4 hours. You only need to activate it with your magic power. Of course, fellow Taoists need not worry that these yellow talismans will fall into the hands of sword cultivators. Their sword energy will not be able to activate them." "All right." Cui Hongshan took them and gave them to everyone. "All right." After waiting for everyone to take the yellow talismans, Jean Exin flew into the air and raised his voice. "Fellow disciples, this is a crucial moment for the survival of our Chicken Crow Mountain. This is also a chance for the heavens to test our Chicken Crow Mountain. Your loyalty to our Chicken Crow Mountain will be tested in this battle. I won't say anything else. All of you, do your best to kill the enemy. Only by killing the sword cultivators can our Chicken Crow Mountain survive. Otherwise, our Chicken Crow Mountain will be destroyed in the hands of sword cultivators. Are all of you confident?" "Yes." All the disciples shouted loudly. Their auras were instantly ignited. "What? I didn't hear it. What did you say?" Jean Exine angrily said. "We are confident that we can kill all of the sword cultivators." All the disciples shouted again. Their auras were like rainbows. "Good, I heard it." Jean Exine clapped his hands and said, "If you are a disciple of my Chicken Crow Mountain, then follow me to kill the sword cultivators." As he spoke, his figure flashed, and he was the first to rush out of the Chicken Crow Mountain's restriction. "Kill!" The disciples of Chicken Crow Mountain roared angrily. They formed a neat formation and rushed out of the restriction with artifacts and other items in their hands. Good heavens! As expected of an aristocratic family of artifact refiners, everyone actually has an artifact. Seeing the disciples of Chicken Crow Mountain rush out with artifacts, Cui Hongshin and the other Imperial Thunder Sect disciples were dumbfounded. "Let's go too." Cui Hongshan glanced at Han Bing. He instructed and flew up first. "Yes." Zhen Minghui and the rest responded. They followed behind Cui Hongshan and rushed into the restriction. Xiaohua was still flying at the back. However, just as Xiaohua flew up, Cui Hongshan's voice transmitted over again. "Follow behind me. Don't go too far." "Oh." Xiaohua was slightly stunned. He looked at Cui Hongshan, who didn't even turn his head. If it wasn't for the fact that the voice was extremely familiar, he would have thought that he had heard wrongly. This young master must have heard wrongly. "I must have." Xiaohua immediately denied it. Several hundred cultivators rushed out of Rooster Crow Mountain, which immediately attracted the attention of the swordsmen. Cries rang out from various places. It seemed to be an extremely strange magic artifact. All the sword cultivators surrounding Rooster Crow Mountain moved towards the cultivators and the others. Seeing all the swordsmen gather, Jean Xian's heart relaxed. However, at this moment, a sharp cry sounded. The swordsmen on the other 3 sides of Chicken Crow Mountain stopped and began to retreat. They once again surrounded the entire Chicken Crow Mountain. Jean Xian's heart sank to the bottom. This was what he didn't want to see the most. He could only plan for the worst. He would exhaust the strength of the sword cultivators today. 3 days later, he would escape with the details of Chicken Crow Mountain. Damn it! Which bastard leaked the details of my Chicken Crow Mountain? Jean Xian's mouth was bitter. He really couldn't figure out how it was leaked. Whoa! A wave of sword cries sounded. Many sword cultivators stepped on flying swords and formed sword seals. They were about the same number as the cultivators of Chicken Crow Mountain. Rumble. In a moment, the swordsmen and cultivators clashed. Loud noises sounded everywhere. The sound of sword cries rang out incessantly. Of course, it only lasted for a short while before intense battles broke out everywhere. At the same time, miserable cries began to ring out from everywhere, from time to time, from sparse to concentrated. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Chapter 2258. The first to rush into the battle was naturally Jean Xian. As the Valley Lord of Rooster Crow Mountain, Jean Xian also had a flying sword in his hand. The flying sword was about a foot long and was held in his hand. Seeing a third-grade swordsman urging his flying sword to fly towards him, Jean Xian waved his hand, and a sword shadow whizzed out from the flying sword, slashing straight at that person. "Huh! How dare you wave your flying sword in front of me, a swordsman? Are you stupid?" The swordsman laughed. His flying sword was like frost, sealing on the sword shadow. The sword shadow froze in midair like snow. With a say sound, the swordsman's flying sword spun rapidly, and the sword shadow shattered into pieces, falling to the ground. At the same time, the swordsman's flying sword did not seem to stop. With a natural leap, like a nimble swallow, it swept across the air and stabbed toward Jean Xian's eyes in the blink of an eye. Hiss! Jean Xian took a deep breath. He was considered good at using flying swords, but he knew that he could not drive his flying sword so fast. This was not a problem with his strength, but the fundamental difference in the cultivation of flying swords. However, Jean Xian was not nervous at all. When the swordsman's flying sword came closer, he waved his hand, and the inconspicuous flying sword drew a beautiful arc in midair, slashing right at the swordsman's flying sword. With a crisp kacha sound, the swordsman's flying sword was like a venomous snake that was hit on its head, stopping in mid-air. Not only that, Jean Xian's sword only paused slightly above the swordsman's flying sword, then slid down again. That crisp sound was from a crack on the flying sword. The swordsman turned pale with fright. With a poo sound, a mouthful of blood gushed out from his mouth, turning his face yellow. A swordsman's flying sword was refined by the primordial spirit. When the flying sword was damaged, the swordsman's primordial spirit would naturally be damaged as well. With the sword essence flowing in reverse, the swordsman was instantly injured. The sword cultivator looked at Jean Xian in shock, but before he could see clearly what was wrong with Jean Xian's flying sword, an indescribable burning force came from all around him. Moreover, there was a strong restrictive force within the heat. It was Jean Xian who had tossed out a few hidden yellow talismans while the sword cultivator was controlling his flying sword. Taking advantage of the fact that the sword cultivator was shocked and injured, Jean Xian sneered when he saw the flames rising around the sword cultivator. He tossed out his flying sword and attacked the sword cultivator. At the same time, his hands moved continuously and various offensive dermic arts rained down like hailstones. At this moment, the sword cultivator's weakness was exposed. The sword cultivator hurriedly retracted his flying sword in an attempt to block Jean Xian's flying sword. At the same time, he spat out a small sword from his mouth and attacked the spells like a swimming fish. However, it only managed to break through less than half of the spells and talismans. With a rumbling sound, the sword cultivator was surrounded by a ball of flames. In just a moment, a miserable scream came from the ball of flames, and a charred corpse fell from the sky. Go! Seeing this, Jean Xian waved his hand, and the storage bag on the corpse fell into his hand. Without stopping, he leaped up and flew towards another sword cultivator who only had the cultivation of the sword gestation realm. There was almost no suspense. The young sword cultivator's flying sword was broken by Jean Xian in just one round. Even his body was cut in half. The Tai green light was indeed the Khanate gold chi. Its sharpness was extraordinary. Looking at Han Bing again, she was also very sharp. Although she still had the bamboo joint in her hand, her opponent was not the sword cultivator from yesterday. The bamboo joint rolled and flowed down like a continuous river. The sword cultivator's flying sword broke through one after another, but there seemed to be no end to it. The sword cultivator's forehead was covered in sweat. The sword energy in his body had been greatly depleted. Kill! Hearing Han Bing's angry roar, the sword cultivator was shocked. Indeed, Han Bing's bamboo joint suddenly expanded and absorbed the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Like a huge tree, it struck down from the sky. The whistling sound of the wind was extremely sharp, and it hit the sword cultivator's forehead. Go! The sword cultivator did not retreat. He formed a sword seal, and his flying sword also expanded. Like an iron awl, it rushed into the air and pierced through. With a poof, the bamboo joint was easily broken by the flying sword. The flying sword pierced into the bamboo joint. However, Han Bing did not seem to be depressed. Instead, there was a trace of smile on her face. Oh no! The sword cultivator was stunned and immediately came to his senses. However, he was still too late. With a poof, an inch-long sword tip pierced through the sword cultivator's sword energy defense and protruded from his chest. There was still fresh blood on the tip of the sword. How is this possible? The sword cultivator lowered his head and looked at the bright red sword tip. With an incredulous voice, he fell from the sky. The sword cultivator's attack is extremely powerful, but how can it compare to the Dao Sect's tactics? Han Bing looked at the sword cultivator's corpse and sneered. All I need to do is break your flying sword. What else do you have to rely on? Of course, this was easy to say, but difficult to do. Along with the sword cultivator's corpse that Han Bing killed, the corpses of several Rooster Mountain disciples also fell. None of the corpses of these disciples were intact. All of them had broken arms and legs. There were even a few corpses that were broken into several pieces. That's right. How could an ordinary cultivator's Dharma artifact have the Tai Azure Light? How could an ordinary cultivator have more than 2 Dharma artifacts? These Rooster Mountain disciples activated their Dharma artifacts with great momentum and attacked the sword cultivator like a tidal wave crashing onto the shore. The sword cultivator's flying sword was like a ray of light. It was like a huge craggy rock that stood in the middle of the tidal wave. It was sharp and sturdy. Under the crashing of the tidal wave, there were only splashes and craggy rocks left. The Dharma artifacts of many Rooster Mountain cultivators had only flown a few feet before they were slashed apart by the flying sword. Waves of brilliance flashed repeatedly, and countless Dharma artifacts fell in a riot. After the Dharma artifacts, it was naturally the sharp flying sword that attacked the cultivators in the blink of an eye. The sword light was eerie and like patches of autumn light. It killed the cultivators who were flying in midair like falling leaves. Fresh blood was like the frost in autumn leaves, burning the sky. In less than half a cup of tea's time, more than 20 Rooster Mountain disciples had already died under the flying sword. Although Jean Xin had just killed several sword cultivators, he was still very anxious when he saw such a situation. According to Jean Xin's thoughts, he had already clearly instructed his disciples. These disciples were not inexperienced in fighting. First, he would let them get used to fighting. Then, he would let them form a formation and use a combined attack to deal with the sword cultivators. But who would have thought? The moment they made contact, the Rooster Mountain disciples collapsed. They had long forgotten about their previous training. Even an Chi refinement disciple from Seven Skills sect had died in the fight. Left with no choice, Jean Xin waved his sleeve. With a loud bang, a signal flew into the sky. Jean Xin had no choice but to send out the signal that they had agreed on. This signal was sent an entire hour earlier than expected. When the people of Rooster Crow Mountain saw the signal rise into the sky, they immediately felt a chill in their hearts. All the disciples naturally flew up and scanned the surrounding disciples with their divine senses. A dozen or so disciples with similar cultivations gathered together and formed a rather orderly formation. Once the formation was formed, these disciples similarly activated their Fa Li in an extremely rhythmic manner. All kinds of magic tools rose up at the same time and smashed towards the sword cultivators in front of them without prior agreement. Similar waves of magic power converged together. The strength of the various Dharma artifacts and scattered light condensed into one place. Immediately, the uneven attacks from before became one. The attack power of the Chi Refinement Disciples was close to that of the Foundation Establishment Disciples, while the attack power of the early Foundation Establishment Disciples was close to that of the Middle Foundation Establishment Disciples. In an instant, on the entire battlefield, 30 to 40 such formations launched the most powerful attack of the Rooster Mountain. Ah! Jean Xin laughed loudly. The flying sword in his hand also flew out as he shouted, "My Rooster Mountain will declare war on the sword cultivators today. Let's see what the sword cultivators are capable of." As you wish. Before Jean Xin's shout could even land, a flying sword that was as bright as the sun soared into the sky. When the sword cultivators saw the flying sword, they quickly retreated and quickly pulled apart the distance between themselves and the Rooster Mountain disciples. Then, just like the Rooster Mountain cultivators, the swordsmen in all kinds of clothing formed a team, forming dozens of teams. Although the number of people in each team was different, when the flying swords of these swordsmen flew out at the same time, the flying swords had different styles and power. They could condense into dozens of huge flying swords that were similarly incomparably fast, with the same piercing sound of the wind and the same flashing sword light. They also attacked the Dharma artifacts of the Rooster Mountain disciples. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Almost continuous sounds rang out, causing the entire Crow Rooster Mountain to tremble. The might of the air waves caused the snowflakes on the ground to gradually rise, and layers of snow white covered the horizon. After the Dharma artifacts clashed, there were screams. Some of the flying sword were not as good as the Dharma artifacts, and some of the Dharma artifacts were not as good as the flying swords. Regardless of the situation, blood splattered everywhere, dyeing the snow mist into a bloody mist. The bloody mist ignited the sky on one side of the Rooster Mountain. The flowers of blood were like flames again. The battle was so intense that the smell of blood had already permeated the entire battlefield. Cui Hongshan and the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect were also facing tremendous pressure. There were only 10 disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect, and they flew out late, so they were slightly off from the main battlefield. The ones facing them were also a few low-level swordsmen and those with pregnant swords. At this moment, Cui Hongshan was flying at the very front. The two Thunder Pearls danced in front of him like dancing notes. Seeing the flying sword of a swordsman with a drawn sword flickering with traces of blood as it flew over, he did not dare to be careless. As he activated the Dharma seal, the Thunder Pearls collided, producing a bolt of lightning that quickly struck the flying sword. Lightning was the nemesis of flying swords. The bolt of lightning instantly swallowed the entire flying sword, and traces of electricity lingered around the flying sword. The body of the swordsman in the distance trembled rapidly, and the expression on his face was extremely ugly. Attack! Cui Hongshan was overjoyed. He activated the Thunder Pearls again and flew towards the swordsman, wanting to take the opportunity to kill him. However, the swordsman's hand formed another Dharma seal, and the brilliance on the flying sword shone brightly. It actually swallowed the entire bolt of lightning, and the flying sword flew up again, piercing towards Cui Hongshan's body. Chapter 2259. Cui Hongshan hurriedly pointed his finger, and one of the lightning beads suddenly flew back to defend, hitting the flying sword. The flying sword's tip was knocked askew, and it brushed past Cui Hongshan's shoulder, while the lightning bead also flew askew into the air. Don't think of leaving. Diu Aichiming was standing guard not far behind Cui Hongshan. Seeing that Cui Hongshan was almost in danger, he anxiously threw the lightning bottle in his hand into the air. Several lightning bolts struck the flying sword. That flying sword was like a bird struck by lightning, suddenly falling from the sky. Before it could fall half a foot, it turned into fragments. Not to mention the sword cultivator. Even Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. No one expected that Dui Qiming's lightning bottle would have such power. The swordsman's flying sword was shattered, and he was seriously injured. He hastily retreated. "Where are you going?" Su Qing immediately waved her fire-controlling fan, and a raging flame rushed towards the swordsman. The other swordsman beside the swift swordsman also pointed his finger, and a raging flame like flying sword rushed over, blocking the flames of the fire-controlling fan. Therefore, the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect also forgot about the joint attack technique at the beginning of the battle and started to fight on their own. Xiao Hua's opponent was a second-grade swordsman. He was majestic and powerful, and his flying sword was also unique. It was like a brass mace that flew up to smash people. Xiao Hua didn't mind. He flew very slowly. His hands were either holding incantations or yellow talismans. He didn't take out any magic tools or magic treasures, but these incantations and yellow talismans were incomparably sharp. Every time, at the critical moment, they would rescue Xiao Hua from the swordsman's flying sword. Xiao Hua's acting was very good, and he looked to be in an abnormally difficult situation. This slowly incited the anger of the swordsman. Clearly, a flying sword could smash him to death, but he was always a step away. Even after another strike, he still couldn't be smashed to death. Dui Ling's lightning seal and Zhenhua's thunder-trapping bead were also useful. Each of them faced two sword-nurturing cultivators. Although there were occasional dangers, they were generally scared but not in danger. Before Zhan Xin sent out the signal, the corner where the thunder-controlling sect was fighting had actually been evenly matched and hadn't suffered any losses. However, after Zhan Xion's signal and the sword cultivator's signal were sent out, the opponents of the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples also began to form a formation. Furthermore, the swordsmen who were previously fighting with the disciples of the Rooster Crow Mountain around the Imperial Thunder Sect also began to gather towards this side. Cui Hongshun did not dare to dawdle and hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Imperial Thunder Sect disciples, listen to my command. Form a team." Yes, all the disciples hurriedly got out of their respective fights and flew up into the air, one higher than the other. "Xiao Hua, don't you have some kind of magic weapon? Why aren't you using it?" Seeing Xiao Hua flying alone beside everyone, Cui Hongshan berated. "Even if you can't protect everyone, you have to protect yourself first." Actually, Xiao Hua originally wanted to take out the cloud-suppressing seal. His hand was already stretched out, but when he heard Cui Hongshan's urging, he rolled his eyes and said, "That transcendent artifact will consume my transcendence energy. Let's wait first." Wait. Cui Hongshan angrily said. "Wait until you lose your life." However, at this moment, the 20 or so flying swords on the opposite side actually attacked at the same time. The huge flying swords that were formed let out a rumbling sound. Before the swords even reached their bodies, the sword intent had already enveloped them. A kind of austere, a kind of cold, a kind of ruthlessness, and a kind of bloodiness enveloped the bodies and minds of the 10 Imperial Thunder Sect disciples. Good, it's indeed powerful. Xiao Hua smacked his lips and slowly took out the cloud-suppressing seal. However, he still held it in his hand and did not take it out. "Fight!" Cui Hongshan's eyes revealed a resolute look. He clapped his hands and actually took out 4 lightning pearls. Each of them flashed with lightning when they collided, forming a rhombus shape to attack the huge flying swords. Following closely behind was Dui Qiming's lightning bottle. At this moment, the lightning bottle was already flashing with lightning, as if a heavenly lightning had been taken out. After that was Zhen Minghui's lightning brick. The lightning brick had already been pushed to the limit by Zhen Minghui. It was a full 10 feet in size, green and red in color, and had the strength of 1,000 caddies. After the lightning brick, it was Su Qing who was on the second floor. Her imperial fire fan was fanned until it turned red. A red flame like a fire dragon spiraled above the lightning brick. As it swam, it absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and pounced towards the huge swords. Zhenhua's thunder-trapping pearl was the most inconspicuous. Streaks of lightning seeped out and followed the fire dragon. It was like a fire dragon playing with a pearl, flying towards the huge swords without any hesitation. Chiosu's fire-congealing pillar was the most dazzling at this moment. A huge pillar of fire seemed to be able to support the heavens and earth. It was also like a collapsed volcano. From top to bottom, it smashed towards the huge swords. The hoo-hoo sound of the wind was enough to make people tremble in fear. Mingmu's lightning whip was a treasure for close combat. At this moment, it was somewhat lacking. However, the lightning whip was like a spirit snake dancing in the air. It also emitted a foot-long lightning and attacked the sword cultivator with a fire-congealing pillar. On the other hand, Dui Ling, who had the weakest cultivation, pushed the thunder seal, which was similar to the cloud-suppressing seal, to the extreme. Although it wasn't as big as Zhang Minghui's lightning brick, it was still very aggressive. It followed closely behind and attacked the swordsman. The Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples combined attack technique with a huge bolt of lightning surrounded by flames. It directly faced the sword cultivator's huge swords. Rumble, ka-cha-cha, crisp sounds like beans being fried were heard. The lightning struck the flying swords and destroyed the entire flying swords. The 9 Imperial Thunder Sect disciples' faces turned red at the same time. Their blood and chi surged, and their meridians were damaged. Looking at the 20 or so swordsmen on the opposite side, other than a few disciples with shallow cultivation who had their flying swords destroyed, the other swordsmen didn't have any major injuries. They only needed to adjust their breathing a little before flying up again. After all, it was 9 against 20. The Imperial Thunder Sect disciples were no match for them in terms of cultivation or numbers. Seeing this, Xiaohua's heart slightly relaxed. Just now, his flying sword was already in his mouth. He wanted to save whoever he saw in danger. He didn't expect the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples' foundation to be so solid. None of them were injured. Let's form a circle, Xiaohua suggested in a low voice. Okay. Cui Hongshan's magic power was somewhat lacking. His limit was 4 thunder pearls. Just now, he had overdrawn his true essence. He couldn't use 4 thunder pearls as he pleased. Therefore, he agreed without hesitation. Seeing the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples forming a circle with their backs against each other, the swordsmen were happy. Weren't they preparing to be beaten? Therefore, they stopped their formation and each of them urged their flying swords to surround the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples and attack them one after another. In just a moment, Dui Ling was surrounded by danger. She was relatively unlucky. In front of her was a drawn sword swordsman who bullied the weak. Although the drawn sword swordsman was a first-grade drawn sword swordsman, it was more than enough to kill Dui Ling fortunately. There was a group of Imperial Thunder Sect disciples surrounding Dui Ling occasionally. They helped Dui Ling block the power of the flying sword. Thus, she was able to hold on for half a cup of tea's time. At this moment, the thunder seal was sent flying by the water-like flying sword. The remaining water flow was like a flying sword as it rapidly pierced towards Dui Ling's towering chest. Dui Ling's face unconsciously turned ashen. That flying sword was so fast that she didn't have time to use her yellow talisman. Moreover, she knew in her heart that her yellow talisman couldn't block this water flow. Beside Dui Ling were Ming Mao and Zhenhua. Each of them had their own opponents to contend with and were similarly unable to provide assistance. The two of them were also very anxious. For some reason, Dui Ling naturally turned his head before he died. He actually looked at the back of the person facing him. An indescribable feeling arose. Dui Ling. Cui Hongshan's divine perception was constantly covering the 9 people. When he saw this situation, he also felt helpless. His opponent was a drawing sword grade 3rd grade, which was slightly higher than him. He could only silently recite Dui Ling's name in his heart and retract his divine perception. He didn't dare to see the first female cultivator in his team fall. But at this moment, a strange thing happened. The sword cultivator, with a sinister smile on his face, suddenly held his head in his hands and suddenly fell from the sky. The water-like flying sword that no one was controlling also stopped in midair. It was pressing against Dui Ling's chest. Ming Mao was ecstatic. With a wave of her hand, a thunderlight talisman shot out. It hit the water like flying sword and sent it flying. I didn't die. Dui Ling turned his head in disbelief and looked at Ming Mao. Martial Aunt Ming Mao, you saved me. It wasn't me. Ming Mao was about to answer, but the opponent was too anxious. She didn't have time to explain. She only pointed at the falling sword cultivator and said, "Kill him." Yes. Dui Ling answered casually and pointed his finger. The thunder strike chased after the falling sword cultivator. Of course, there were other sword cultivators in the surroundings. They urged their flying swords to block Dui Ling's thunder strike and fought with Dui Ling. What's going on? Cui Hongshun was baffled by the fact that he didn't hear any screams and that Dui Ling was fighting with the sword cultivator. But not long after, the same strange thing happened again. However, this time, it happened to Zhenhua. It was almost the same as Dui Ling. Just as Zhenhua was in danger, his opponent hugged his head and obediently fell from midair. He missed the opportunity to kill Zhenhua. Cui Hongshun was flabbergasted. Who? Where did this cowardly junior come from? He actually hides in the dark to hurt people? Cui Hongshun wasn't the only one who was baffled. The sword cultivators surrounding the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples were also baffled. Their spiritual senses and flying swords rapidly scanned their surroundings, trying to find the ambushing cultivator. Kill. Cui Hongshun didn't give him a chance. He urged his artifact and led the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples to attack. This time, the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples' courage was somewhat bolstered. They didn't hold back at all and killed the swordsman in a moment. Damn it, this feels great. Cui Hongshun had never felt so comfortable before. We'll take this opportunity to kill our way out of the encirclement. Hurry up and run for your lives. Xiaohua's words sounded again at an inappropriate time. You only know how to run. Cui Hongshun said coldly. Where's your artifact? Still not taking it out? I lost it. Xiaohua's words almost angered Cui Hongshun to the point that he fell from midair. How can an artifact be lost? However, fortunately, Cui Hongshun didn't ask. Otherwise, Xiaohua would have definitely made him ask Taoist Jingru. That guy would have grabbed Cui Hongshun's hand and answered him with sincerity. Let alone a magic weapon. Even a life source magic weapon could be lost. Chapter 2260. Seeing that Cui Hongshun did not want to leave and was still thinking about the bet with Han Bing from Seven Skills Sect, Xiaohua coldly attacked his confidence. Look at the front of Chicken Crow Mountain. How many disciples are still alive? Don't forget, this is only the sword cultivators from one side. If the sword cultivators from the other three sides all come, we will definitely die. That's right. Cui Hongshun's heart quivered. He waved his hand and said, "Let's go, we will fight and retreat." At the same time that Cui Hongshun decided to escape, Han Bing and Zhang Xian also made a decision. They had already found out that the sword cultivators were here for the primordial mother of gold and would definitely not let them escape. They naturally had to return to Chicken Crow Mountain and make the second step of their plan. They would make proper arrangements for the primordial mother of gold and then escape. Zhang Xian and Han Bing scanned the area with their divine senses and saw that the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect were slowly moving towards the outside. Both of them revealed a sinister smile. Zhang Xian made a prompt decision and waved his hand. Another scarlet flame shot up into the sky. This was the signal for all disciples to retreat. Once the Chicken Crow Mountain disciples left and the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples were left behind, would they still have a chance to survive? Seeing the scarlet flame flying into the air, the Chicken Crow Mountain disciples were relieved. They all tried their best to break away from the battle and flew towards the restriction of Chicken Crow Mountain. However, at this moment, an earth-shattering sword cry sounded from the north of Chicken Crow Mountain. It was extremely far before, but in an instant, it was right in front of them. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Clang, clang, clang. On the battlefield, all the flying swords broke free from the swordsman's hands and flew straight into the air. Countless sword lights flew up, and countless sword cries combined with the huge sword cries. It was actually the posture of 10,000 swords worshipping the ancestor. Han Bing, Zhang Xen, Cui Hongshan, and the others were all shocked. They looked at the distant horizon in confusion. They saw an extremely gorgeous rainbow streak across the sky. An incomparably huge flying general flashed in the air. At the same time, an unparalleled sword intent enveloped the entire Chicken Crow Mountain. The strength of a nascent soul. No one knew the power of this sword intent better than Xiaohua. Xiaohua shrunk his neck and quietly returned the magic treasure that he had just taken out of the space. He suppressed his magic power to the early stage of foundation establishment and obediently stood there like everyone else. It was a foolish appearance of being controlled by the sword intent. Greetings, Senior Hua Jian. The group of sword cultivators stood in the air and bowed in unison. The flying swords also hummed in unison and trembled slightly, as if they were also paying respect to the huge sword. The giant sword stood in the air and gradually turned into the appearance of an old man. The old man's face was scarlet red, and his gaze was like a sword. With a slight turn of his eyes, he could actually see the entire Chicken Crow Mountain. Xiaohua's body involuntarily felt a chill, and goosebumps rose all over his body. Inside the boot of fire, the Dream Slayer was also struggling, as if it wanted to compete with the giant sword. My young master, are you tired of living? Xiaohua's primordial spirit inside the flying sword sensed the flying sword's unwillingness. He was very anxious and almost wanted to say, "Don't fight now. Just obediently stay here. One day, when this daddy also turns into a sword, I'll bring you out to show off." As if it heard Xiaohua's inner voice, the Dream Slayer obediently fell into the immeasurable karmic fire. Useless thing. A loud sound like swords clashing rang out. You almost ruined this old man's great matter. There are only so many cultivators on Chicken Crow Mountain, so why are you still surrounding the mountain? Just kill them all. As he spoke, the old man disappeared again, and the giant sword appeared in the air again. Moreover, the giant sword slowly waved, as if it was controlled by an invisible hand. The spirit chi of heaven and earth within a few miles of the Chicken Crow Mountain swirled and landed on the strike of the giant sword. Xiaohua felt as if his eyes were dazzled. The giant sword seemed to be moving yet not. In almost the blink of an eye, the giant sword flew up again, and the old man's figure appeared again. At this moment, a series of earth-shaking rumbles appeared. The entire Rooster Crow Mountain was shaking. Over 1,000 swordsmen had attacked the formation for a day and a night, but they couldn't break through the restriction at all. Now, under Laozi's sword attack, it was actually split open. The sword intent of the huge sword hadn't even dissipated. It deeply cut into the Rooster Crow Mountain, revealing a huge hole that was several zhang long. Good boy. This is the strength of a sword transformation. This young master can't compare. Xiaohua shrunk his neck again and didn't say anything. With the restriction broken, Chicken Crow Mountain was like a woman whose clothes were cut off, revealing all kinds of secrets. Sure enough, it was barren, and there wasn't a single person in sight. Looking at the sword transformation old man again, a light appeared in his hand, and a sword seal struck Chicken Crow Mountain. Coincidentally, it was the cave that Xiaohua snuck into yesterday. Wang, another violent sound was heard. It was as if Sunset Island had emerged from the bottom of the sea. A giant sword shadow slowly came out from Chicken Crow Mountain. Flying sword. The giant sword shadow had yet to fully reveal itself. It was incomparably cold and sharp, and its sharpness filled the entire Chicken Crow Mountain. It was the sword intent that suddenly appeared when Xiaohua collected the innate mother of gold last night. Xiaohua suddenly came to a realization. This Chicken Crow Mountain was not only the place where Qiqiao sect refined their flying swords, it was also the place where Huan country's sword cultivators buried their swords. Moreover, looking at the giant flying sword that slowly flew out and the dense Tai azure light on it. Xiao Hua knew that this flying sword had an incredible origin. When the sword transformation old man reached out his hand, the flying sword fell into his hand like a pool of autumn water. A hint of joy flashed in the old man's eyes, and he casually waved his hand. A flash of azure light appeared. It was completely silent, and a mountaintop of Chicken Crow Mountain was sliced off. Ha ha! The Tai azure light sword indeed lives up to its reputation. The sword-wielding old man raised his head and let out a long howl. However, when his divine sense entered the Crow-Fowl Mountain, he let out a cold snort and pointed his finger. The people of the Crow-Fowl Mountain actually foiled my plans. Kill them all. After saying that, his entire body transformed into a sword and suddenly flew up, heading towards the north. After the sword transformation old man left, the situation of the entire Chicken Crow Mountain changed drastically. The sword cultivators who were guarding the three sides of Chicken Crow Mountain no longer had any misgivings. They all roared, and the flying swords beneath their feet shone brilliantly. They flew past the empty Chicken Crow Mountain and charged toward Zhang Xian, Han Bing, and the others. Han Bing had originally sent out the signal to return to the mountain. All the Chicken Crow Mountain disciples had retreated from the battle, and their formation had already scattered. Under the sword transformation old man's sword intent, no one dared to move recklessly. At this moment, when they heard that he was going to kill them all, their minds were already in a mess. Their gazes or divine sense swept past, and like scattered flies, they flew towards the gaps that the sword cultivators had yet to close. Assemble, assemble! How could Zhang Xian not know that there was no other outcome other than being killed one by one in this chaos? At the same time as he shouted, he sent another signal into the air. Obviously, this signal was not given in advance. When the group of Chicken Crow Mountain disciples saw this, some of them stopped and looked at the signal in the sky in a daze, guessing Zhang Xian's intentions. However, some disciples did not care at all. Their figures did not stop, and they quickly flew past the crowd. Seeing some disciples fly away, the disciples who stopped also followed suit. They activated their magic power and continued to flee. Seeing that the entire scene was so chaotic, with only a small number of core disciples stopping and gathering around him, Zhang Xian sighed. He knew that the situation was hopeless. He called out to the crowd, "Get into formation. We will quickly kill our way out." Seeing the disciples quickly get into formation, Zhang Xian turned to look at Han Bing. He wanted to call the 7 Skills sect disciples to break out of the encirclement together. However, when he turned to look at Han Bing's actions, he was so angry that his nose almost went crooked. Needless to say, Han Bing's actions were faster than his. She had already taken out the flowing cloud flying ship. The remaining 9 7 Skills sect disciples had already boarded the flying ship. Under Han Bing's control, the flowing cloud flying ship had already flown more than 100 feet. It was about to rush to the edge of the encirclement of the sword cultivators. Go! A desolation of monkeys scattering when the tree topple spontaneously arose in Zhang Xian's heart. However, Zhang Xian did not have the time to experience such feelings. He quickly ordered his disciples to get into formation. They took out their magic tools and other items. They formed a triangle and flew in the direction where the number of sword cultivators was thinned out. As for Cui Hongshan and company, they were no different from the Chicken Crow Mountain disciples. When the sword cultivator old man appeared, their faces were pale. The quintessential essence in their bodies could not flow at all. They could barely maintain their flying posture in midair. When the sword cultivator old man flew away, they immediately felt relieved and instinctively flew away from Chicken Crow Mountain. When he saw Cui Hongshan fleeing in panic, Xiao Hua felt disdain. He thought to himself, the disciples of a cultivation aristocratic family are nothing more than this. How can they compare to us itinerant cultivators? However, he could not help but remind them. He berated them. Don't rush. Get into formation, or you will all die. His voice was extremely loud. It did not contain any magic power, so it did not cause people to think, nor did it cause them to fall from midair. However, it was still heard by everyone. Everyone was stunned. They hastily turned their heads to look back. Fortunately, the Imperial Thunder Sect only had 10 disciples. Apart from Xiao Hua, who was still flying slowly and fell several zhang, and Cui Hongshan and Dui Qimeng, who were rushing in the same direction, the other 6 disciples also broke through the encirclement, but they had scattered. Crisis was indeed the best experience to test one's heart. Cui Hongshan raised his eyes again and looked at the swordsmen rushing over like a tide. He let out a long sigh and said, "Disciples, we are the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Now, even if we're facing death, we must die a worthy death. We cannot lose the face of our Imperial Thunder Sect. We must make the sword cultivators of Huan country laugh at us." Just now I was panicking, but I was wrong. From today onwards, I will not leave you, junior brothers. That's right. Zhen Minghui also shouted. Even if we die, we, the 10 disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect, will die together. Ha ha, come. Little swordsmen of Huan country, have a taste of your mother's power. Dui Ling also laughed heartily. Unexpectedly, he was extremely free and easy. He slapped his hand, and the thunder seal flew out from his storage pouch. Scattered light shot in all directions as it attacked a swordsman who was already within a few zhang of him. Chapter 2261. Dui Ling. Get into formation. Cui Hongshan thought even more. With a sweep of his divine perception, he knew that the entire scene was in danger. He hastily stopped Dui Ling's impulsiveness and called for everyone to form a back-to-back formation. He and Dui Qimeng were still at the front. Damn it, this is what this young master wants to say. Xiaohua was flustered and exasperated. This was the phrase he had just thought of with great difficulty. Just as he shouted it, the rest of the phrase was completely snatched away by Cui Hongshan and Zhen Minghui. However, at this moment, who would care about him? They were all filled with sorrow as they circulated all the magic energy in their bodies. All kinds of magic tools and treasures were summoned. Not only did they cover themselves, but they also protected the nearby disciples. Fisk, Xiaohua thought for a moment and secretly said, "Should I be so impulsive? Should I be so unafraid of death? That old fart has already left. Isn't this chicken crow mounting the world of this young master? As long as the 9 of you don't run around, this young master can protect all of you." Although he thought this, Xiaohua still clapped his hands. The cloud-suppressing seal that he hadn't summoned earlier flew out of the space. Once this cloud-suppressing seal was summoned, it immediately emitted a buzzing sound. All kinds of pearls condensed and rapidly absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It emitted a bronze brilliance and protected the 10 people in one place. Of course, this brilliance was extremely thin. It seemed that as long as a sword cultivator's flying sword pierced it, it would break. Xiaohua, don't protect us. You just need to protect yourself. Seeing this, Cui Hongshan was slightly happy. However, seeing that the brilliance of the treasures was thin, he thought that Xiaohua's magic energy was insufficient. He immediately warned, "Your magic energy is meager. Don't bite off more than you can chew." "What do you care? I'm happy to do so," Xiaohua unceremoniously replied to this disciple from a cultivation family. He simply didn't appreciate it. Take it or leave it. Cui Hongshan knew that he couldn't say a single word to Xiaohua because there were many words waiting to hit him back. Go. Moreover, Cui Hongshan didn't have the time to continue wasting time with Xiaohua. The numerous sword cultivators ahead had already approached, and their bright flying swords were either like sowing discord, fine needles, or trickling streams of water as they assaulted Cui Hongshan at the same time. Obviously, they intended to annihilate these disciples of the Imperial Lightning Sect. Kachacha, the 4 lightning pearls collided with each other, and several bolts of blue lightning were produced, all of them thrusting towards the incoming flying sword. Dui Qimeng was right next to Cui Hongshin. She was very clear about Cui Hongshin's cultivation and knew that he would not be able to defend against these flying swords. However, just as she took out her lightning bottle and wanted to help Cui Hongshin, several flying swords that were not any weaker than the ones that attacked Cui Hongshin attacked her. DUI, Qi Ming understood that if she didn't accept the challenge, not only would she die, but Ming Mao, Xiao Hua, and the rest would also be implicated. Feeling helpless, she gritted her teeth and tried her best to activate the lightning bottle. Several lightning webs flew out from the bottle's mouth and flew toward the flying swords. Needless to say, the rest of the people were also being attacked by flying swords, so they had no choice but to use all their strength to face the enemy. Only Xiao Hua was constantly waving his left and right hands, throwing out different yellow talismans one after another. Fireballs, water balls, shackles, and other yellow talismans exploded one after another, blocking the sword cultivator several zhang away. The sword cultivator's flying swords were also blocked by the cloud-suppressing seal's defensive brilliance. Pooh! Just as Xiao Hua was thinking about how to escape with the 9 people, a snow-white sword light pierced through the brilliance and pierced into the cloud-suppressing seal's defensive brilliance. Courting death, Xiao Hua secretly said, and used soul stab once again. That sword cultivator suddenly fell from midair, and his flying sword also disappeared. Haha, that's great. Dui Ling, who was right next to Xiao Hua, saw that the sword cultivator had fallen, and his heart was greatly relieved. At this moment, a flame also rushed into the cloud-suppressing seal's defensive brilliance and attacked in front of Dui Ling. As expected, the sword cultivator who used the flame sword fell from midair again. My goodness, what's going on? Xiao Hua was extremely shocked as he asked, Did their brains grow buds? Who knows? Dui Ling laughed and said, I reckon that the heavens saw that this concubine's beauty was peerless and couldn't bear to let this concubine fall here. That's why this swordsman was killed. Xiao Hua, you can also bask in my glory. Thank you. Xiao Hua curled his lips and replied in a very meaningful manner. In this way, it was very strange. Although Xiao Hua's cloud-suppressing seal appeared to be a transcendent artifact used by early Foundation establishment cultivators, and its brilliance was very thin, it wasn't easy for ordinary flying swords to pierce through. When a flying sword pierced through, the swordsman who used the flying sword would inexplicably fall. After a long time, how could the swordsman not notice? While they were doing their best to kill, they also sent out disciples to search for swordsmen with high cultivation. The 10 disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect were flying and fighting at the same time. They had already flown several hundred feet and gradually left the front of Chicken Crow Mountain, arriving at a remote area. Although they were surrounded by hundreds of swordsmen, if Xiao Hua used his divine ability to open a path, the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect should be able to escape with their lives. Just as Xiao Hua was thinking of making a move, he heard a loud shout. Fellow Daoist of the Imperial Thunder Sect, help me! Xiao Hua and the others scanned the area with their divine senses and saw that the flowing cloud-flying ship of Qi Qiao Sect was flying towards them from the front of Rooster Crow Mountain. Han Bing was the only one on the ship, and behind her were dozens of 4th or 5th grade swordsmen who were on their flying swords, chasing after them aggressively. This bastard deserves to die. Seeing that Han Bing had lured over high-level swordsmen, how could Xiao Hua not know what this bastard was thinking? Dozens of 5th grade swordsmen, that was dozens of Middle Foundation establishment cultivators. Their attack power was comparable to a late Foundation establishment cultivator. How could the 10 disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect deal with them? Presumably, Han Bing had no other way out. Seeing that the Imperial Thunder Sect was actually able to steadily escape, he wanted to cause trouble. Although Xiao Hua was not afraid of these dozens of swordsmen, he did not dare to fight with his full strength. He was afraid that the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect would be injured. This would not only cause the Imperial Thunder Sect to lose face, it would also cause Xiao Hua to lose face. However, Xiao Hua was only slightly angry. His divine senses landed on the flowing cloud, flying ship again. Damn it, the disciples of the Seven Skills sect are really good. They are even more generous than the Imperial Thunder sect. They knew that I needed a flying magic tool, so they gave me the Flowing Cloud flying ship. Xiao Hua made a new decision in his heart. For the sake of the Flowing Cloud flying ship, I will also save you. However, Xiao Hua only thought for a moment. The distance between Han Bing and the Imperial Thunder sect was more than several hundred feet. This guy had just led the disciples of the Seven Skills sect to escape in a different direction from the Chicken Crow Mountain and the Imperial Thunder sect. Moreover, the Flowing Cloud flying ship was extremely fast. He almost escaped. Unfortunately, he was too eye-catching. Not only was he in the middle stage of Foundation establishment, but he also had a flying magic tool. The swordsmen from the other three sides of the Chicken Crow Mountain naturally treated him as the first target to kill. Just as he was about to break through the swordsman's defensive line, he was intercepted by several fourth-grade swordsmen. Since he was left behind, the result was needless to say. The 8 disciples of the Seven Skills sect were all killed, and Han Bing was also injured. The most terrible thing was that the 4th and 5th grade swordsmen seemed to have their eyes on the Flowing Cloud flying ship. They all flew towards Han Bing's direction, hoping to kill this guy. Therefore, if Han Bing wanted to fly over from his side, it would take some time. Just as he was about 10 feet away from the Imperial Thunder sect, 2 sword lights, one green and one red, caught up with Han Bing from behind like 2 intertwining dragons. They only twisted around his head. Han Bing, who was panicking like a stray dog, no longer had any energy left in his meridians to activate his magic power. Under the attack of these 2 swords, the defensive brilliance only flickered slightly before it was annihilated. His head fell onto the flying ship, and his body also fell down. Only the flying ship continued to fly towards the Imperial Thunder sect disciples due to inertia. Seeing that Han Bing was killed by the green and red swords, many swordsmen who were chasing after them slowed down their flying speed. They knew that the Flowing Cloud flying ship already had an owner. However, their flying direction did not change. They still rushed towards the 10 Imperial Thunder sect disciples. At this moment, the 100 swordsmen besieging the Imperial Thunder sect also stopped, waiting for the arrival of these high-level swordsmen. The Imperial Thunder sect disciples' faces were ashen. However, Cui Hongshan flew up half a foot, turned back to Yui Qimeng, and said affectionately, "Qimeng, I used to have a dream. I hoped that I could become a famous cultivator in the Xiaoyu continent. That way, I could roar in the 9 heavens and command all the cultivators. For this dream, I left the Cui family and joined the Imperial Thunder sect. My dream in the Imperial Thunder sect is still the same, but in this dream, there's another dream. This dream is to marry you to my Myriad Thunder Valley and use our hands to restore the reputation of the Myriad Thunder Valley. We will no longer be looked down upon and ridiculed by others. However, now, before my dream even began, I am about to wake up. Not only did I fail to marry you into the Myriad Thunder Valley, but I also brought you to my mortal enemy. If it weren't for me, you would still be in Sky Patrol City and would not have fallen so early. Husband." Dui Qimeng flew up and came to Cui Hongshan's side. She reached out and held his hand, smiling sweetly. Although some people dual cultivate, their hearts may not be together. Although you and I did not dual cultivate, our hearts have merged into one. This concubine cannot be your wife in this life, but even if I become a ghost, I will still be your ghost bride. In the next life, I will still dual cultivate with you." "Good." Cui Hongshan tightened his hand and said, "Wife, a real man has some things to do and some things not to do. Today is the time for your husband to speak his mind. Your husband has become the leader of the first team, so I must have the awareness of a leader. Even if your husband dies, he must die before them. To be able to be accompanied by my wife before I die, I have no regrets in this life." Then, Cui Hongshan glanced at everyone and warned, "This Cui is untalented and has led all of you to a dead end. Don't blame this Cui. This Cui will now go and block those high-level sword cultivators. If you all escape in the opposite direction, you may still have a chance of survival. In addition, senior brother Minghui, this Chui's unworthy junior brother, is in your care. Then, he glanced at the green and red double swords that had already flown in front of him. Without waiting for anyone to say anything, he coldly said to Xiaohua, Xiaohua, this Chui knows that you don't like this Chui. To be honest, this Chui is the same as you. However, since this Chui has been entrusted by Master and Master's wife, and you are this Chui's junior brother from the same sect, this Chui will definitely protect you even if it costs my life. Now that this Chui is gone, you should take care of yourself. Sometimes don't be too willful. Chapter 2262. Sigh. Chui Hongshan seemed to want to say something, but when he saw the green and red swords in front of him and the sharp sword energy cutting off the black hair on his forehead, he knew that he was no match for these two swords. Thus, he hurriedly stopped and pointed his finger. The 4 lightning beads crisscrossed and flashed with lightning to meet the green swords. Dui, Qiming also hurriedly urged the lightning bottle to meet the red swords with great tacit understanding. Captain, Zhen Minghui and the others all had tears in their eyes. They really had mixed feelings in their hearts and didn't know what to say. At this moment, an unparalleled pressure came from behind them. Along with that pressure was a kind of aura that could overturn heaven and earth. That pressure and aura continued to skyrocket. A crazy hurricane was born from the center of the aura, quickly sweeping across a radius of several hundred feet. The group of swordsmen, regardless of whether they were high-grade or low-grade swordsmen, all stood in midair, unsure of what to do. Before the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples could figure out what was going on, they saw a golden light emerge from behind them. They only felt their eyes brighten, and they heard 2 crisp kacha sounds. The sword lights of the green and red dual swords, which had easily killed Han Bing and Chui Hongshan and Dui Qiming, paled in comparison to this golden light. Not only that, but the green and red swords' tips were actually cut off by the golden light. Oomph. This is what I want to say. Why did you steal it? If you all die here, will I still have any face left? A voice that was extremely familiar to the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples rang out. However, it was lazy before, but now it was angry. You want to have a dream? Then I'll give you the chance to realize your dream right now. When everyone turned to look, they saw Xiao Hua majestically flying high in the sky and forming seals with his hands. Above his head, a phoenix celestial body floated out of thin air. The scarlet phoenix celestial body spread its wings for more than 300 feet. When the wings flapped, there was the sound of wind and thunder. Under the phoenix celestial body, blue lightning flashed with sharp claws. That aura, that pressure, it was released from this phoenix celestial body. Xiaohua. The Imperial Thunder Sect disciples were all dumbfounded. Chui Hongshan and Dui Qimeng were also dumbfounded. However, Chui Hongshan's eyes flashed with a trace of understanding. He finally understood that everything that eldest senior brother Xiang Yang had said was true. Behind this realization, there was a burst of lingering fear, as well as a monstrous shock in his heart. In Chui Hongshan's heart, he immediately recalled his encounter with Xiao Hua on the Sky Thunder Peak, as well as his interactions with Xiao Hua. Only now did Chui Hongshan understand how tolerant Xiao Hua was towards him, or perhaps how shallow he was. He actually called himself senior brother in front of a senior brother whose cultivation was much higher than his, and he was so disrespectful to this senior brother, so belittling him. Although Xiao Hua hadn't made a move yet, Chui Hongshan knew very well that if Xiao Hua were to reach out at any moment, Chui Hongshan's life would be in danger. He was truly ignorant and fearless. But what did I do wrong? After waiting for the regret and shock to recede, Chui Hongshan proudly thought, Xiao Hua is only a rogue cultivator. He's only one step ahead of me. If I were to increase my strength, I might not necessarily lose to him. Not to mention, Chui Hongshan's mind turned rapidly, and he looked at Xiao Hua again. Go Xiao Hua, who was like a demon god, shook his body. The phoenix Dharma body let out a clear cry, flapped its wings, and flew in front of Chui Hongshan. With a wave of his two claws, several thick thunderbolts struck out, hitting the two sword cultivators who were about to fly to the flowing cloud flying ship. These two third-grade sword cultivators tried their best to resist the lightning bolts. One of them, who was charred black, barely managed to stand firm in midair, while the other directly fell down. "It's only a Dharma body." In the distance, a white-haired swordsman anxiously said, "Quickly surround them. We can kill him with our swords." Hearing this swordsman's reminder, the group of sword cultivators who were shocked by Xiao Hua suddenly woke up and surrounded him from all directions. Xiao Hua's phoenix Dharma body grabbed the flowing cloud flying ship and flew back. At the same time, countless tiny lightning bolts struck out from the tips of its wings, knocking away the flying swords of the cultivators. "Quickly get on the flying ship." Xiao Hua pointed his finger, and the soaring dragon shears once again cut through the sky, cutting off several flying swords. He hurriedly commanded the cloud-suppressing seal to protect Zhen Minghui and the others. Zhen Minghui and the others woke up from their daze and flew onto the flowing cloud flying ship. As soon as Zhen Minghui landed on the flowing cloud flying ship, he immediately took off Han Bing's storage bag and took out a jade slip. He hurriedly immersed his divine sense in it, looking for the method to control the flowing cloud flying ship. "Chui Hongshan, are you still not going?" Xiao Hua glared at Chui Hongshan, who was still standing in midair. "Why should I go?" Chui Hongshan said coldly. "You hid your cultivation. Are you trying to embarrass me at this time? You just want to see me make a fool of myself? TCH, who has the patience to see you make a fool of yourself?" Xiao Hua retorted sarcastically. "Every time you steal my words, I don't even have time to say them. I would rather die than receive your favor." Chui Hongshan said stubbornly. "Ha ha ha." Xiao Hua also laughed loudly. "If not for eldest senior brother and eldest senior sister-in-law's warnings, if not for you being my myriad Thunder Valley's disciple, I wouldn't care about your life or death. It's just that, isn't it too late for you to think of not receiving my favor?" "You." Chui Hongshan suddenly thought of how the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples' opponents inexplicably fell from midair one after another. Needless to say, that was definitely Xiao Hua's method. "Ha, isn't it too late?" Xiao Hua was incomparably comfortable at this time. He covered Chui Hongshan with his sleeve, and Chui Hongshan had no strength to resist at all and was immediately restrained by the universe in the sleeve. "You go up." Xiao Hua originally wanted to throw Chui Hongshan into Dui Qiming's arms, but on second thought, he waved his sleeve and threw Chui Hongshan onto the flowing cloud flying ship. "Many thanks, junior brother Xiao." Dui Qiming laughed as she escaped from death. She then followed Chui Hongshan onto the flying ship. "Go!" Xiao Hua pointed his finger, and the cloud-suppressing seal shone brightly and flew onto the flowing cloud flying ship, protecting it tightly. "Which one of you doesn't want to live? Want to fight with me?" Xiao Hua saw that the matter was settled and waved his hand. The soaring dragon shears floated in midair, and the huge phoenix avatar was also malevolent. He turned his head and roared towards the dozens of fifth-grade swordsmen. The group of sword cultivators saw Xiao Hua's arrogance and unconsciously became sluggish. "I'm here to kill you." A sturdy man who was more than 10 feet tall, like an iron tower, flew over from nearby with a long staff-like flying sword in his hand. "Oomph, a mere fifth-grade swordsman actually dares to challenge me." Xiao Hua snorted coldly. With a wave of his arm, the huge phoenix avatar swooped down from the sky. Insignificant skill. The sturdy man brandished his long sword. The long sword spun like a windmill, and a hurricane was also born from the long sword. It was exactly the same as the hurricane of the phoenix avatar. "Fight!" Xiao Hua sneered and lightly reprimanded. The sharp claws of the phoenix avatar swung down from the sky, and a thick bolt of lightning was born from the claws and directly hit the sturdy man. "Pooh!" The sturdy man was not nervous at all. He opened his mouth, and a blue pellet flew out. It grew with the wind, and in a moment, it actually became the size of a fist. That bolt of lightning was precisely hit by this object. Zilala, the huge bolt of lightning actually lingered around the bead, and then it was slowly absorbed by the bead. Thunder-trapping bead? Damn it, this guy actually has my thunder-controlling sex artifact. Xiaohua was furious. This was originally an attack to show off his might, but it was actually broken by this guy. How could he not be angry? Kill! Xiaohua did not hesitate. He urged his magic power, and the soaring dragon shears flashed again. This time, the golden light was even brighter. It was almost like a golden dragon flying towards the sturdy man. The sturdy man sneered and waved his hand. Ignoring Xiaohua's phoenix avatar, he actually held the long sword in his hand and slashed horizontally at the soaring dragon shears. With a soft sound, the thick long sword and the golden light brushed past each other. The golden light not only cut through the long sword, but also cut through the sturdy man's body. The sturdy man looked at his long sword that was cut into two pieces in disbelief. His expression was very gloomy. Obviously, his primordial spirit was seriously injured. But then, the sturdy man unconsciously lowered his head to look at his waist. He saw that there a line of red gradually flowed out, and in a moment, it was like a waterfall of blood. Then, the sturdy man's lower body fell off, and the sturdy man himself also fell in midair. If you die, then you die. Things can't be wasted. Xiaohua's voice sounded again. The two pieces of the long sword and the sturdy man's storage bag were in his hand. Hiss! The group of swordsmen sucked in a breath of cold air, and their figures retreated again. At this time, the disciples of Chicken Crow Mountain had basically been wiped out. Many sword cultivators had died, and the remaining ones had all gathered. There were actually nearly several hundred of them. I'll fight you. Without waiting for Xiaohua's challenge, an old man with a sixth-stage drawing sword flew out and said coldly, "You're only at the early stage of foundation establishment, relying on your bloodline avatar." Ha ha! Xiaohua laughed loudly and pointed his hand. Transform into a sword. I'm the one in charge here. You're just a drawing swordsman. You're just throwing away your life. Go. Xiaohua did not say much. The phoenix avatar soared into the air, and the soaring dragon shears similarly slashed through the air, attacking the old man at the same time. Attack! The old man waved his hand, and a green light flew out. Sharp sword chi immediately filled the area within several dozen feet, like the cool moonlight in autumn. Tai green light. Xiaohua came to a realization and immediately understood why the old man was not afraid of the soaring dragon shears. This old man will receive your phoenix avatar. Xiaohua's phoenix avatar had just flown up when a swordsman with an extremely similar appearance to the old man also flew out. With a wave of his hand, a green sword light also flew out. Twin swordsman? Wooden sword. Xiaohua was somewhat dumbfounded. Rumble. Sure enough, the phoenix avatar's lightning was blocked by the wooden sword and could not achieve anything. And the soaring dragon shears and the flying sword tempered by Tai green light were both undamaged when they collided. They're really going too far. Xiaohua was speechless. Two six-stage swordsmen against him. How shameless. Chapter 2263. Go! Xiaohua seemed to have endless magic power. With a wave of his hand, the soaring dragon scissors flew out again, and the phoenix avatar's sharp claws grabbed out again. The two old men were somewhat disdainful, but just as the soaring dragon scissors streaked past the old man holding the Tai azure light flying sword, it suddenly accelerated and flew toward the other old man. At the same time, the phoenix avatar's sharp claws also passed by the other old man and attacked this old man. These two changes were really too fast, and the distance between the two sword cultivators was not too far. In the blink of an eye, the soaring dragon scissors and lightning arrived in front of the two. All the spectating cultivators were shocked. Ha ha ha! The two cultivators were not in a hurry, and actually laughed loudly. The two of them formed inexplicable sword seals, and the same azure flying sword in their hands actually swayed. Kacha! The soaring dragon scissors hit the azure flying sword that looked like a wooden sword, but sparks flew everywhere, and there was no damage at all. The two old men actually used a secret technique to switch the azure flying sword in their hands. Sure enough, when the Phoenix Avatar's lightning struck the other flying sword, it was like a stone sinking into the sea, and there was no power at all. Amazing! All the sword cultivators exclaimed from the bottom of their hearts. However, before they could exclaim from the bottom of their hearts, the situation on the field changed again. All the sword cultivators only looked at the azure flying sword in the old man's hand, but Xiao Hua moved at this time. He did not need to use any thunder-controlling movement, only the hibernating thunder escape, and in the blink of an eye, he flew in front of the old man closest to him. At this time, the soaring dragon scissors had just hit the flying sword. Oh, is this cultivator's brain damaged? All the swordsmen looked away from the flying sword and naturally saw Xiao Hua approaching the old man without anyone noticing, and they were all surprised. After all, Dao Sect cultivators had weak bodies, and Xiao Hua did not look like a body cultivator. A sword cultivator's body was much stronger than a Dao Sect cultivator's, and close combat was a sword cultivator's final killing move. The old man was naturally startled, but then the corners of his mouth curled up in contempt. The azure flying sword in his hand shook slightly, and actually split into three to slash at Xiao Hua. Go to hell! Xiao Hua sneered, and a pitch-black spear suddenly appeared in his hand, and he used his strength to stab at the old man's chest. Magic weapon? The old man naturally knew what was good for him. He could tell at a glance that Xiao Yinlu was extraordinary, but he realized it too late. Xiao Hua's strength was great, and his speed was fast. The old man only felt a strong wind that was strong enough to suffocate him. He had just swung his flying sword a little when the demonic spear pierced his chest. The old man screamed. Before his body fell, Xiao Hua didn't stop at all. He turned around, used the bright thunder escape, and rushed towards the other old man. When Xiao Hua turned around, he didn't forget to put the old man's storage pouch and the green flying sword into the space. Following the elder's death, his twin brother's heart was also pierced with pain. Seeing Xiao Hua rapidly rushing over, his eyes turned red. The flying sword in his hand streaked across an azure light, sprinkling all around Xiao Hua, as if wanting to cut Xiao Hua into pieces of minced meat. Clang, clang, clang. A series of soft sounds rang out as the flying swords all landed on the dragon's silver gilt. Although the flying sword didn't succeed, it still managed to obstruct Xiao Hua's plan. Just as the old man activated his sword Origin and was about to use another divine ability, the surrounding sword cultivators cried out in alarm. The old man was slightly stunned, but then the golden light in front of him shone brightly. The soaring dragon scissors streaked across the golden light in midair, strangely splitting the old man in half. Xiao Hua used the soaring dragon scissors as the main force and the dragon silver gilt as the support. True and false, true and false, true and false. He killed 2 6th-stage sword cultivators in one fell swoop. Ha! Who's a match for a sword cultivator? Who still dares to come and throw away their lives? Xiao Hua laughed loudly. He put away his storage pouch and green flying sword and roared loudly. Ignore him. A dignified voice rang out. This cultivator is stalling for time, letting us fight him one by one, so that the cultivators on the flying boat can escape. We don't need to care about him fighting alone. Listen to my command. Split into 2 groups and attack as a whole. One group attacks the cultivators on the flying boat. The other group attacks this guy. Damn it, there's finally someone who understands. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He spread his Phoenix Dharma body's wings and blocked the swordsman 300 feet away. He also consumed his magic power to kill and establish his might. Just as the swordsman said, he wanted to protect the people on the flowing cloud flying boat. What he was most afraid of now was these swordsmen forming a formation and attacking. Of course, Xiao Hua wasn't afraid of himself, but he was afraid of hurting the people on the flying boat. Moreover, until now, he still hadn't completely revealed his strength. He didn't want to completely reveal it so early. Following the swordsman's command, hundreds of swordsmen began to form a formation several hundred feet away. Xiao Hua's divine sense locked onto the swordsman, but he knew that even if he killed the swordsman now, it would be useless. It was better to think about how to escape. Rise! Xiao Hua angrily roared, and the Phoenix Dharma body once again flew over. Its 300-meter-long wings spread open, and its two sharp claws immediately grabbed the bow of the flowing cloud flying ship. The 30-meter-long flying magic tool was like a small wooden boat. Go! Xiao Hua's figure flew, and he used the hibernating thunder escape. He rushed towards a group of about 20 people who had just formed a formation not far away. The soaring dragon scissors turned into a golden light and rushed in front of Xiao Hua's head. The Phoenix Dharma body's wings flapped, and waves of wind and thunder rang out incessantly. Lightning flashed in all directions, and its two claws tightly grabbed the flowing cloud flying boat. It followed Xiao Hua's body and rushed forward. Quick! The group of sword cultivators didn't expect Xiao Hua to rush towards them instead of a gap. They immediately formed sword seals and urged their flying swords to attack Xiao Hua. Go! Xiao Hua's face revealed a ruthless expression. He urged the soaring dragon scissors to cut through the sky, sweeping straight towards the group of sword cultivators in front of him. At the same time, he urged the suppressing cloud seal to fly in front of him to block the incoming flying swords. The group of sword cultivators miscalculated again. They didn't expect Xiao Hua to not use the soaring dragon scissors to block their flying swords, but to pass through the gap between the flying swords and directly kill them. When they understood, how could they be faster than the soaring dragon scissors? Several miserable screams rang out, and several sword cultivators in the middle were cut in two by the soaring dragon scissors. Moreover, the soaring dragon scissors merely drew an arc in the air and actually chopped up again from below. Several more sword cultivators were caught off guard and were cut in two. Looking at the flying swords attacking Xiao Hua again, they had already been blocked by the suppressing cloud seal. Following the fall of many sword cultivators, several flying swords were taken away by Xiao Hua. Run! Seeing such a cruel and merciless killing god, the remaining sword cultivators opposite Xiao Hua only had this word in their minds. Ga! The Phoenix Dharma body let out a long cry, and like a shooting star, it grabbed the flowing cloud flying boat and followed Xiao Hua out of the gap between these fleeing sword cultivators. Quick, block them! Following that dignified voice, another group of 30 sword cultivators flew over in front of Xiao Hua, barely maintaining their formation. Ha! Kill! Xiao Hua had already grasped the method to kill sword cultivators. Without the slightest hesitation, he sent out the soaring dragon shears. Just like before, where the two golden lights passed, another dozen or so lives perished. Xiao Hua also collected another dozen or so flying swords. Damn it, what a pity, there aren't many storage pouches. Xiao Hua was still a bit far from the sword cultivators. Although he collected a few, even more still fell. When Xiao Hua rushed out of this group of sword cultivators, his eyes suddenly opened up. There were no more groups of sword cultivators blocking his way. Only a dozen or so sword cultivators saw him appear and immediately flocked back, fearing that Xiao Hua's soaring dragon scissors would fly towards them. Chase! The voice that Xiao Hua loathed sounded again. Xiao Hua coldly turned his head and saw a middle-aged swordsman with a square face and red sword armor commanding two groups of swordsmen to chase after him. Without hesitation, Xiao Hua turned back, and the soaring dragon scissors in his hand flickered with a dazzling brilliance, and pounced towards that swordsman. The middle-aged swordsman didn't expect that Xiao Hua would actually turn back. While he was shocked, he hastily flew behind a group of swordsmen to hide. That group of swordsmen was also frightened by Xiao Hua. Seeing the golden light fly over, they immediately fled, throwing whatever formation and such to the back of their minds. Ha ha ha! Xiaohua laughed heartily. His figure sank into the air, and he waved his hands. The dozen or so storage pouches that fell into his hands. Shortly after, he turned around again, urging the phoenix Dharma body that stopped in midair to fly into the distance once more. Ha ha! Xiaohua's unbridled laughter reverberated in the air. The group of sword cultivators actually numbered in the hundreds, but no one dared to chase after him. They didn't even dare to say a single word. It was as if they were afraid that Xiaohua would turn back again. Silence. Only the sound of the whistling wind was still there. After a long while, an unknown sword cultivator mumbled in a low voice, "This guy doesn't seem to be a disciple of Chicken Cry Mountain. Looking at that lightning cultivator's spell, he should be a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. We can't be considered to have disobeyed Senior Hua Jian's orders." These words were like a spring breeze, blowing all the frozen sword cultivators back to life. Their faces were filled with ready-made vitality. That's right. This guy's cultivation is really too high. Didn't you hear what he said? He's invincible under Hua Jian. We're only at the unsheathed sword realm. How can we resist? Yes, the Imperial Thunder Sect can't be compared to Chicken Cry Mountain. They're a famous sect, and they actually sent out a disciple comparable to the illusory sword realm in the first stage. It's really not something we can imagine. Forget it. The middle-aged sword cultivator dressed in scarlet sword attire also appeared at this time. He waved his hand and said, "Quickly go clean up the mess. Kill all the survivors of Chicken Crow Mountain. Take away all of Chicken Cry Mountain's treasures as well." The Imperial Thunder Sect's disciple has left, but it won't be long before the Dao Sect's disciple comes. We can't make another mistake. Yes, the group of sword cultivators didn't dare to be negligent. They hurriedly took action, either destroying the corpses and destroying the evidence, or plundering the spirit stones. They had already made arrangements beforehand, and everything was done in an orderly manner. Not to mention the fact that the sword cultivators had successfully plotted against Chicken Cry Mountain. Just the fact that Xiaohua had driven the Phoenix Dharma body and brought the flowing cloud flying ship to fly dozens of miles away in one go was enough. Xiaohua's Buddhist sense didn't leave Chicken Cry Mountain at all. Seeing that the sword cultivators didn't chase after them, his heart also relaxed. Chapter 2264. Seeing the flat foothills in front of him, his eyes turned, and his face immediately turned sallow. The Phoenix celestial body also began to tremble. Then, with a sad cry, its claws loosened, and the flowing cloud flying ship fell toward the foothills. The Phoenix celestial body returned to Xiaohua's body, and the cloud-suppressing seal and soaring dragon shears also disappeared. What worried everyone the most was that Xiaohua's figure swayed, and he fell from the sky. "Junior brother Xiao! Xiaohua!" Ming Mao and Dui Ling shouted at the same time. They flew down from the flowing cloud flying ship and rushed toward Xiaohua at the same time. Ming Mao was naturally a bit faster and hugged Xiaohua in one go. "Damn it!" Xiaohua cursed in midair. "Su Qing, Qiu Su, you two things, this young master save you in vain. Seeing that this young master's magic power was exhausted, you didn't even come down from the flying boat. Instead, you let two female cultivators come over. I wanted to faint for a while, but now that I'm fine, how can I do that?" Thus, Xiaohua opened his eyes slightly, and his figure broke free from Ming Mao's embrace. He barely managed to stand in midair and said, "Thank you, senior sister Ming Mao. I'm fine. It's okay, junior brother Xiao." Ming Mao said with great concern, "If you can't fly, let me carry you. And there's still me." Dui Ling rushed over at this time and said with a look of longing, "Xiaohua, you're really too brave. You really didn't exceed my expectations. You really made me happy. Don't say too much." Xiaohua waved his hand and looked at the flowing cloud flying ship on the foothills and said with a smile, "Let senior brother Minghui quickly clear the flying ship, and let's go." Dui Ling nodded and said, If you can't, then let's fly first. When Xiao Hua flew to the front of the flying ship, the flowing cloud flying ship also slowly flew under Zhen Minghui's control. Junior brother Xiao, quickly come up, Zhen Minghui called out affectionately. It's all because I'm stupid. I can only control the flying ship now. Okay. Xiao Hua didn't say anything else and jumped onto the flying boat with Dui Ling and Ming Mao. The flying boat drew a beautiful arc in the air as it flew towards the north. The further it flew, the more stable it became. On the flying boat, Xiao Hua had just sat down when Dui Qiming walked over with a smile. Junior brother Xiao, if you still have magic power, release Hong Shun's shackles. I tried just now, but it didn't work at all. Xiao Hua looked at Cui Hongshun lying on the flying boat, and his expression was very unsightly. He shook his head and said, All right, senior apprentice Sister Dui, I don't have any magic power in my meridians. I can't break this confinement technique right now, so I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist Cui for a while. Fellow Taoist Cui. Although Dui Qiming didn't say anything, she was shaking her head in her heart. However, since Cui Hongshun and Xiao Hua were willing to step forward at the most critical moment and risk their lives to protect each other, no matter what the reason was, whether it was master and mistress's instructions or senior brother and senior sister-in-law's repeated reminders, it showed the affection between fellow disciples in a myriad Thunder Valley. He was many times better than those fellow disciples of Xiao Chong's, who only knew how to play the blame game. Therefore, Dui Qiming wasn't nervous at all. In her heart, she also vaguely felt that Xiao Hua might have done it on purpose. Junior brother Xiao, this is a chief cattail pill. Quickly take it. Su Qing hurriedly handed over a pill and said very apologetically, Just now, senior apprentice Sister Bright Eyes was blocking in front of me, so I didn't have time to fly down. Hee, it's nothing. Xiao Hua took the pill with a smile and took it without saying anything. He sat cross-legged on the side and circulated his energy. He usually took green spirit pills, so this chief cattail pill's medicinal power was too little and was basically useless. In any case, he was just putting on an act. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, he opened his eyes and saw that everyone was sitting at the side, staring at him without blinking. They really want to see him clearly from the inside out. I don't have anything to look at, right? Xiao Hua looked down and asked. Seeing Xiao Hua suddenly open his mouth, everyone was slightly stunned and hurriedly said, No, nothing. Xiao Hua got up and walked to Cui Hongshan's side. He stretched out his hand and grabbed at the air as if he was holding a heavy object. Cui Hongshan instantly felt his body lighten, and the feeling of being pressed down by an extremely heavy object was swept away. He immediately stood up from the flying boat. Hongshan, Dui Qiming hurriedly walked over and held his hand very sweetly. Qiming. Cui Hongshan also revealed his tender feelings and held Dui Qiming's hand. The two looked at each other, and although they didn't say anything, it was better than 1,000 words. A love that had gone through the test of life and death could be stronger than gold. Xiao Hua, I didn't expect your cultivation to be so profound. Cui Hongshan's hand was held by Dui Qiming. How could he not know what the beauty was thinking? He thought for a moment and said, You were able to easily escape from hundreds of sword-drawing cultivators. Not only that, Xiao Hua curled his lips. This Xiao also killed several sword cultivators. And Cui Hongshan nodded. This Cui, thanks you for saving my life. As he spoke, Cui Hongshan actually let go of Dui Qiming's hand and prepared to bow. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua only slightly raised his hand, and Cui Hongshan's hand couldn't bow no matter what. It was just like how Xiang Yang did that year. No need. This Xiao has already said that if you weren't a disciple of the Myriad Thunder Valley, if you weren't a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, then this Xiao wouldn't care so much. Xiao Hua once again regained his previous laziness, and even somewhat contradicted Cui Hongshan's tone. All right, either way, great kindness can't be thanked with words. If you don't want to bow, then don't bow. Cui Hongshan didn't hold back and said as he straightened his body, This is a straightforward person. Xiao Hua nodded. You have some of this Xiao style. Cui Hongshun treated this sentence as if it had been blown away by the wind, and he didn't hear it at all. He probed, "You clearly have such a powerful cultivation, almost on par with Master. Why don't you show a bit in front of Master? At least he'll be a bit happier." "What does this have to do with you?" Xiaohua rolled his eyes again and asked, "Since you've said so, and this Zhao's cultivation is so high, then can't you call this Xiao senior brother?" "Impossible," Cui Hongshun coldly said. "This Cui entered Foundation establishment before you, so naturally I'm your senior martial brother. If you want this Cui to call you senior martial brother, then you can enter Gold Corps before this Cui." "This is what you said," Xiaohua snappily said. "This Xiao wants to see who will enter Gold Corps first." Hee. Cui Hongshun laughed again and glanced at Xiaohua. "With fellow Taoist Zhao's cultivation, you'll definitely enter Gold Corps before this Cui. However, fellow Taoist Xiao, don't forget how you addressed this Cui when you were Qi Refinement, and this Cui was Foundation Establishment." Dui Qimeng, who was listening at the side, couldn't help but laugh. That day when Xiaohua called Cui Hongshun fellow Taoist Cui, Dui Qimeng was there. Now, Cui Hongshun actually used Xiaohua's original words to send him back. It was truly wonderful. Everyone from Thunderclap Palace, as well as Ming Mao and Dui Ling. Only when they heard this did they truly understand where the conflict between Xiaohua and Cui Hongshun was. These two people actually almost cut off contact with each other for the sake of a senior martial brother status. If it weren't for the sword cultivator's coercion today, these two people might have become lifelong enemies. Is it worth it? This was what everyone thought. Yes, is it worth it? Maybe it's because of the two youngsters' grudges. Maybe it's because of the opposition between aristocratic families and loose cultivators, or maybe it's because of a gradually deepening misunderstanding. Who knows the specific reason? Forget it. Call me whatever you want. Xiaohua waved his sleeves and sat to the side again. He put a few azure spirit pills into his mouth and closed his eyes to cultivate. He wasn't afraid of thousands of sword cultivators. But what about the old man who transformed into a sword? He took away the innate golden essence, and that old man clearly knew that Chicken Crow Mountain had innate golden essence. What became to find Xiaohua? Senior Marshal Brother Ming Wei, give this little brother the jade slip for controlling the boat. Cui Hongshun ignored Xiaohua and walked to Zhen Minghui's side, saying, "This little brother will also help you control the flying boat." "Oh, that's right. Han Bing's storage bag belongs to this Xiao. Make a copy of this jade slip for controlling the boat." Xiaohua, who was meditating, suddenly opened his eyes and said in a low voice, "So stingy." Not only Cui Hongshun muttered in his heart, the crowd of Thunderclap's sect disciples had the same thought. Also, this flowing cloud flying boat, when we're near Sky Patrol City, this Xiao will also take it away. Xiaohua didn't care about their thoughts and continued to say, "If the Seven Skills sect disciples or our masters see it, how can we have a share?" "All right," Cui Hongshun nodded and said, "This flowing cloud flying boat was seized by fellow Taoist Xiao. We don't have any other thoughts. When we reach the place, we'll immediately disembark. You're all from the first team of Thunderclap sect. You can ride this flowing cloud flying boat at any time in the future. This Xiao will definitely not take your spirit stones." After Xiaohua finished explaining everything, his heart was finally at ease. He closed his eyes and began to cultivate. Cui Hongshun and Zhen Minghui looked at each other. There was both joy and bitterness in their eyes. Needless to say, it was all thanks to Xiaohua that they were able to escape from Chicken Crow Mountain today. Without Xiaohua's help, the 9 people from Thunderclap's sect wouldn't have any chance of survival. Looking at the 10 people from Seven Skills sect, one could see the fate of the Thunderclap sect disciples. Moreover, with Xiaohua here, not to mention today, even in the future, in the battle between Dao sect and sword cultivators, there is no doubt that they would have a higher chance of survival. However, just like Cui Hongshun's previous shock, Zhen Minghui's heart was also filled with doubts. Xiaohua's performance, just now, was not simply the performance of a mid-stage Foundation establishment cultivator. To be able to kill a 6th-grade twin swordsman and frighten hundreds of swordsmen into not daring to chase after him. It was absolutely impossible to do this without the cultivation of a golden core cultivator. The strength of a golden core cultivator. Cui Hongshan had been dreaming of this, but he didn't expect it to appear on Xiao Hua, who he had always looked down on. Chapter 2265. Then they thought of Xiao Hua's unfathomable methods. That over 300 feet Phoenix Dharma body, the wind and thunder above the Dharma body, the thunder and lightning controlled by the Phoenix claws, the fleeting lightning escape technique, the demonic spear that broke the swordsman's defense with a single spear strike, the sure-kill demonic spear, and the golden flash, the magic treasure that took a human life without even seeing the shape of the magic treasure. These, any one of them, was a divine ability that they couldn't covet even if they wanted to break their heads. How could they not feel the bitterness in their mouths? Then they thought of Xiao Hua's slack when capturing the green crab. How could he not be slack? That thing simply couldn't enter his eyes. Where did Xiao Hua go? He must have gone to find out where the green crab came from. They were still excited about the bean-sized Tai green light, and he went to find out where the Tai green light came from. This gap wasn't measured by miles. Unfortunately, they still underestimated Xiao Hua. Not to mention that Xiao Hua only revealed less than 50% of his strength. Even if they knew that Xiao Hua had obtained the innate Gold Mother, they would be so shocked that they wouldn't be able to cultivate in peace for several days. Of course, the premise was that they knew what the innate Gold Mother was. Xiao Hua's thoughts were different. He cultivated while pondering. He was somewhat puzzled. How could that old swordsman take out a flying sword from the foot of Rooster Cry Mountain? Was this flying sword tempered with the innate Gold Mother? Or was it absorbing the Tai green light under the innate Gold Mother? Perhaps it's like that. Xiao Hua thought of that green crab again. If it wasn't for the flying sword absorbing the Tai green light under Rooster Cry Mountain, how could the Tai green light leak out and be obtained by the green crab? Damn it! If I knew there was such a powerful flying sword under the innate Gold Mother, why didn't I look down? That flying sword is probably better than the innate Gold Mother. Thinking of the old swordsman's might when he took out the flying sword from the foot of the mountain, Xiao Hua almost wanted to drool. If I took the flying sword, wouldn't I be able to kill hundreds of swordsmen with a single sword? In addition, this Huan country's swordsman scheme is really far-sighted. They actually tempered a flying sword in my country of Shi. If I didn't come here occasionally, this innate Gold Mother would have been taken away by the Huan country's sword cultivators. Haha, this young master's luck is really not for show. However, when he thought about how the primordial Mother of Gold had been exchanged for by the hundreds of cultivators of the Rooster Cry Mountain, Xiao Hua felt somewhat dejected. The battle between sword cultivators had only just begun, but hundreds of cultivators had already died in front of him. Even he himself had reaped the lives of dozens of swordsmen. The war is truly cruel. Xiao Hua couldn't help but think. At the same time, he thought of Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yuha, whom he'd met at the Feather Immortal Assembly. Those two female sword cultivators seemed to be very good as well. Captain Chui, Zhan Minghui, who was steering the boat, suddenly thought of something and hurriedly transmitted his voice. How should we report to Senior Brother Jinyun when we see him? Are you going to tell me everything about this place? Oh, that's right. Cui Hongshan was also slightly surprised. Over 1,000 sword cultivators had gathered at Chicken Crow Mountain. Needless to say, their movements would definitely be reported to the Lightning Control Sect. If they did not report it, they would have to bear the crime of not reporting it. But if he were to report it, what should he say? The only thing that needs to be explained is Xiao Hua's cultivation. But Xiao Hua's cultivation was something that even their master had no choice but to conceal. How could he let them speak of it? Although Xiao Hua did not warn them, nor did he make them swear any oath, Cui Hongshan knew that Xiao Hua definitely did not want them to speak of it. And the most important thing was their rejoicing just now. If Xiao Hua was here, then they would have a chance to survive. If Xiao Hua was not here, then they could be drowned by the waves of sword cultivators at any time. Not to mention big waves, just a small wave from Chicken Crow Mountain would have sunk the flowing cloud flying ship. If Cui Hongshun had told the truth about Xiao Hua's strength, then there was no need to think about it. Cui Hongshun would have guessed that Xiao Hua would definitely have been transferred from his Imperial Thunder Sect's first team. Only now did Cui Hongshun truly know that the matter of Flame Forest Mountain that Xiangyang had mentioned was absolutely not fabricated. Everything was done by Xiao Hua. This fellow disciple of the Myriad Thunder Valley was really a treasure. Senior Brother Minghui, how do you think I should deal with it? Cui Hongshan thought about it and had some ideas, but he still couldn't make a decision. He transmitted his voice and asked. Zhen Minghui looked around and transmitted his voice with shifty eyes. Do you still need to say it? This junior brother of yours is so powerful. Isn't he our bodyguard? How can we let him escape? Senior Brother Minghui means. Cui Hongshan's eyes lit up, and he said with a smile, we will only talk about the result and not the process. Of course. Cui Hongshan clapped his hands and said, and this result has to be said early. Don't forget that not a single disciple of Chicken Crow Mountain escaped. Aren't we the ones who have the final say in this matter? If they don't agree, they can go find the sword cultivators to verify it. And indeed, Cui Hongshan wasn't a pedantic person like Xiangyang. He thought for a moment and said with a smile, and I still have the token of Chicken Crow Mountain. Valley Master Zhan Xin can't possibly give it to me after his death. Ha ha ha, exactly. Zhen Minghui heard and couldn't help but laugh out loud. You guys, Dui Qimeng and the rest were sitting cross-legged. They weren't cultivating, but were calming their hearts and carefully recalling the danger just now. Suddenly hearing Zhen Minghui laugh, they all unconsciously opened their eyes. And wait a moment. Cui Hongshan waved his hand and said with a smile. Of course, this wave also included Xiao Hua. However, Cui Hongshan knew that Xiao Hua wouldn't open his eyes at all. Sure enough, except for Xiao Hua, the other 8 people all gathered together. Cui Hongshan told them about the matter he had discussed with Zhen Minghui, and finally said, I am going to report to Senior Apprentice Brother Zhen Yun that I left Chicken Crow Mountain long before the swordsman's attack. I wonder what everyone thinks. Of course, Dui Ling was the first to raise his hand and said, Xiao Hua is our first team's Xiao Hua. I don't want him to leave. And Captain Chui is right. Dui Cheng also echoed. The war has just begun, and we have to consider our own future. Since we have explained the situation of Chicken Crow Mountain, we have achieved our purpose of coming to Chicken Crow Mountain this time. It's not like we didn't complete the mission. This concubine agrees. No one had any objections. Cui Hongshan reached out his hand again and took Han Bing's storage pouch from the flying boat. Without even looking at it, he handed it to Dui Qimeng and said, Qimeng, this belongs to Xiao Hua. Give it to him. Don't let him think about it when he is cultivating. Yes, this concubine understands. Dui Qimeng smiled at Cui Hongshan and turned to walk toward Xiao Hua. This flowing cloud flying boat wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. Although it didn't have a quiet room to rest, it was at least 10 feet long and was very spacious for 10 people. Xiao Hua was sitting at the stern. When he heard Dui Qimeng coming over, he opened his eyes and said with a smile, Senior Sister Dui, is something the matter? Of course, Dui Qimeng didn't think that Xiao Hua didn't know what happened just now. However, she still handed over the storage pouch with a smile and said, This is Han Bing's storage pouch. Hongshan asked me to give it to you. Also, regarding the matter of Chicken Crow Mountain, he has already said that he won't mention it to anyone else. Xiao Hua took the storage pouch and put it away without looking at it. He then said as if he didn't care, This is also good. Everyone doesn't need to make a hard oath. As expected, Dui Qimeng suddenly understood. Xiao Hua Jin didn't plan to reveal it. Cui Hongshan was right. Senior Sister Dui, this place is still far from Sky Patrol City. Xiao Hua said, We don't need a rush. We just need to fly at about the same speed as before. Otherwise, it will be hard to explain. Also, this little brother needs to cultivate. If there is nothing important, don't disturb me. Okay, this concubine understands. Dui Qimeng nodded with a smile and turned back. Asking Senior Sister Dui to bring the storage pouch over is the same as you bringing it over yourself. This guy obviously wants to compromise, but he still wants to save face. Really? Xiao Hua closed his eyes again and sneered in his heart. This young master is still your senior brother. Since you have such intentions, this young master will understand. Dui Chimeng relayed Xiao Hua's words to Cui Hongshan. Cui Hongshan nodded, indicating that he understood. He then sat down cross-legged and controlled the flowing cloud-flying boat with Zhenming Wei. Rooster Crow Mountain was not too far from Sky Patrol City. With the speed of the Thunderboat, it would only take more than half a month. The flowing cloud-flying boat was not as good as the Thunderboat, but it would only take about 20 days to fly there. However, Cui Hongshan was not in a hurry. After flying for more than 30 days, they arrived near Sky Patrol City. When Cui Hongshan and Zhenming Hui saw the snow region city in the distance, which was like a pillar supporting the sky, they lowered the drifting cloud boat and shouted, "Junior brothers, the Sky Patrol City is right in front of us. We're going to abandon the boat and fly." Yes. All the disciples responded and disembarked from the flowing cloud flying boat. Xiao Hua waved his hand and kept the flowing cloud flying boat into the space. "Let's go." Cui Hongshan waved his hand and did not stay there. Alas, 30 days have passed in the blink of an eye. This young master's cultivation growth is really limited. Xiao Hua's thoughts were still different from the others. He had to face a nascent soul cultivator, so he could not be without pressure. Seeing that Sky Patrol City was just around the corner and they might really meet immortal Jingru, he could not help but sigh. How good would it be if I could cultivate in seclusion for more than 10 years? Stop. Which sector are you from? The snowy scenery near Sky Patrol City was naturally different from the left side of Rooster Crow Mountain. Cui Hongshan and the others flew and talked as they looked at the jade trees and jadeite branches. Snow covered the ground. Suddenly, a shout came from the sky, and more than 10 armored cultivators appeared. Cui Hongshan looked at the slightly older cultivator in the middle stage of foundation establishment at the front and frowned slightly. He stopped and cupped his hands. "Who are you?" "We are the city guards of Sky Patrol City. I am Song Jia." The foundation establishment city guard was not displeased. He looked at everyone's Taoist robes and smiled. "Fellow Taoist, are you a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect? But I don't know. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian." Chapter 2266. That's right. I'm Cui Hongshan from the Imperial Thunder Sect. I'm leading the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect. I was ordered by my master to go to Chicken Crow Mountain for business. Now, I'm returning to Sky Patrol City. I wonder if the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect have arrived at Sky Patrol City. Cui Hongshan replied in a manner that was neither haughty nor humble. "Chicken Crow Mountain? You came from Chicken Crow Mountain?" Song Jia was stunned and immediately rejoiced. He hurriedly said, "My Sky Patrol City received news that Chicken Crow Mountain was annihilated by sword cultivators a month ago. Not a single disciple escaped. How did you all escape?" "Ah, Chicken Crow Mountain was annihilated by sword cultivators? Not a single disciple managed to escape?" Cui Hongshan turned to look at Zhenming Wei. His face also showed surprise as he said, "We were ordered to go to Chicken Crow Mountain by our master, but..." At this point, Cui Hongshan stopped talking and smiled. "We need to report this to our master. Please forgive me, fellow Taoist Song. I can't tell you about this." "Yes, I understand." Song Jia did not intend to force him. He nodded and said, "Senior Chimachian from the Imperial Thunder Sect has already entered the meeting hall of my Sky Patrol City. If fellow Taoist Cui wants to report, I can lead the way." Of course, Cui Hongshan did not know what a meeting hall was. However, after hearing what Song Jia said, he could only nod and said, "Thank you, fellow Taoist Song. Please." Song Jia did not say anything else. He instructed the other city guards to continue patrolling nearby. He and another early-stage Foundation establishment city guard accompanied the 10 disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect to Sky Patrol City. After flying for a while, the Sky Patrol City gradually approached. Cui Hongshan asked in a low voice, "From what I know, the patrol area of the 7 major cities in the kingdom of Shi doesn't seem to be this far. Is it because the sword cultivator's attack is too fierce? Haha, I don't know the specific situation either. Song Jie explained with a smile. I just received the city lord's order to increase the patrol range. However, as far as I know, the matter is not as serious as fellow Taoist Chui thinks. Other than Chicken Crow Mountain and Clear Cave, two small places where sword cultivators killed them inexplicably, my Dao sect and sword cultivators have both won and lost in other places. In fact, my Dao sect even has the advantage. Speaking up to here, Song Jie hesitated for a moment before continuing. However, the borders of the state of Shi, the state of Lian, and the state of Huan are extremely vast. Unless all the cultivators are guarding the borders at the same time, there's no way to stop the sword cultivators from entering the territory of our Dao sect. Right now, the sword cultivators and my Dao sect's attacks are intertwined, and we are in a stalemate. I'm afraid there won't be any special changes in the next few years. Senior Song, did the Sky Patrol City expand a patrol area because they were afraid of being attacked by sword cultivators? Dui Ling couldn't help but ask when he realized that Song Jie didn't explain why the Sky Patrol City expanded the scope of their patrol. Since Dui Ling was a Qi refinement cultivator, Song Jie only smiled and said proudly, my Sky Patrol City is one of the 7 major cities in the country of Shi. Not to mention that the meeting halls of the 3 cultivation countries are located in Sky Patrol City. Just the Snowfield City Lord of Sky Patrol City is enough to intimidate sword cultivators. How dare a sword cultivator cause trouble in my Sky Patrol City? I'm guessing that it's because of the problem at Chicken Crow Mountain. The city lord is afraid that the disciples of various sects and cultivation families who are coming to my Sky Patrol City will suffer losses, so he sent us out. Even the disciples of the cultivation families are coming. Dui Ling rolled his eyes and smiled. Wouldn't that be extremely lively? Chui Hongshan thought more and asked tentatively. Based on what fellow Taoist Song said, there are sword cultivators appearing near the Sky Patrol City. This isn't considered a secret. Fellow Taoist Chui will know when you reach the Sky Patrol City. Song Jie saw that there was no way to avoid it and smiled. This time, the sword cultivators launched a large-scale attack on the 3 cultivation countries. They are quite arrogant. Weapon cultivators, beast cultivators, and other rarely seen cultivators have appeared. Their methods are strange, and there are always people trying to sneak into my Sky Patrol City every few days. Beast cultivators? Weapon cultivators? Dui Ling's eyes widened and asked curiously. Sword cultivators live by swords and are sword cultivators. Where are beast cultivators and weapon cultivators? Song Jie raised his eyes and looked at the Sky Patrol City that was still a little far away and explained, beast cultivators and weapon cultivators are similar to sword cultivators. They use spirit beasts or magic weapons to attach their primordial spirits and cultivate their bodies with them. From there, they can use the power of the spirit beasts or magic weapons to improve their cultivation. Wow, there's such a magical cultivation method on the Dawnrain continent? Dui Ling exclaimed. It's not that magical. Song Jie replied. We cultivators absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, cultivate the golden core, and give birth to babies. We emphasize on the Taoist foundation, and it's a magical power that can touch the creation. As for sword cultivators, weapon cultivators, and beast cultivators, they are all unorthodox techniques. They only seek magical powers for a while, and do not seek the path of longevity. How can it be magical? This junior is just curious. I didn't expect there to be all kinds of cultivation methods in this world. Dui Ling's face was slightly red as he smiled apologetically. Xiaohua was still flying at the back. He didn't speak, but he was laughing in his heart. This is nothing. This young master has ghost cultivators, Confucian cultivators, Buddhist cultivators, and even soul cultivators' cultivation methods. All of them can compete with Dao sections. Sword cultivators, weapon cultivators, and beast cultivators are rare, but in essence, I'm afraid they're not much different from Dao sects. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's heart was moved. Sword cultivators were sword cultivators. To be able to compete with Dao sects until now, it was enough to show that they were extraordinary. Although he had obtained Li Xiubai's sword cultivator inheritance, he didn't carefully comprehend sword cultivators' cultivation methods because he had sword plays the world. Previously, when he fought with sword cultivators at Chicken Crow Mountain, those sword cultivators' strength was indeed very different from Xiao Hua's, but their attacks were indeed unique. This showed that sword cultivators still had their merits. Xiao Hua had obtained a lot of storage bags and flying swords. If he searched among them, maybe there would be some unexpected surprises. Let's wait in Sky Patrol City and find a quiet room to rest. Xiao Hua thought as several people gradually flew closer to Sky Patrol City. Seeing the might of Sky Patrol City, Xiao Hua was extremely emotional. Among the 7 major cities in the country of Xi, except for Tongmu City, Xiao Hua had been to the other 6 cities. These 6 cities really had their own characteristics and lived up to their names. At this time, at the gate of Sky Patrol City, there were more people patrolling. The cultivation of the city guards was also much higher. There were as many as 10 leaders in the middle stage of Foundation establishment and the late stage of Foundation establishment. It could be seen that the situation in Sky Patrol City was far from optimistic, as Song Jie said. Fellow cultivators, Song Jie led Chui Hongshin and the others to the disciple on duty and said, "Please take out the token of Imperial Thunder Sect and other things for inspection." Chui Hongshin nodded and took out the token. He activated his spiritual power and injected a spell into the token. Then he handed it to a leader in the middle stage of Foundation establishment. The leader immersed his spiritual sense into it and looked at it. Then he looked at Chui Hongshin and Zhen Mingwei one by one. Then he returned the token to Chui Hongshin and nodded. "Not bad. The first team of Imperial Thunder Sect. The image and imprint of the token are intact. Please." Song Jie also handed his token to the leader for inspection. Then he raised his hand and motioned for Chui Hongshin and the others to follow him into the city gate. Just as they entered, the dozen or so team leaders all looked at them, as if they were paying attention to them. Chui Hongshin and the others were naturally genuine Dao sect disciples. Even if Xiao Hua was a little strange, his meridians were still filled with vital spirit and would not cause the restriction to move. Only after the 10 of them had entered the city gates did the leaders turn their attention elsewhere. Others might not notice it, but Xiao Hua, who was walking at the back, was extremely sensitive. He had long been uncomfortable being stared at by the dozen or so people. When he knew that they were looking away, he secretly complained, "Why would a capable sword cultivator come here to walk into a trap? I'm afraid this kind of vigilance is useless." After entering the Sky Patrol City, Xiao Hua and the others naturally did not follow to the meeting hall. Under the lead of another city guard, they went to the station of Imperial Thunder Sect. Chui Hongshin was taken to the meeting hall. At this time, the meeting hall was different from before. The futons on the 3 floors were full of cultivators. Some were old, some were young, some were male, and some were female. Everyone's expressions were different. Some were frowning slightly, some were gloating, and some were scratching their chin as if they were thinking about something. "Fellow cultivators," a loud voice sounded. It was the middle-aged cultivator sitting on one of the 9 futons in the first row. This middle-aged cultivator was none other than Lu Xinwu, the cultivator in the middle stage of Gold Core realm of Shanghua sect. He was also the representative sent by Shanghua sect this time. "What? Fellow cultivator Lu, did you think of something?" A hale and hearty old man opposite Lu Xinwu had his eyes slightly closed. When he heard Lu Xinwu's words, he was somewhat displeased and asked, "Ha, fellow cultivator Li, sword cultivators are the same as your Changbai sect. They all cultivate flying swords. You should know better than me what they want to do, right? Seeing that you have been silent, you must have thought of something?" Lu Xinwu did not answer, but asked instead. The hale and hearty old man was Li Jijia, the cultivator in the middle stage of Gold Core realm of Changbai sect. Fellow cultivator Lu's words are really wrong. Li Jijia sneered. Changbai sect is not the only sect in my Dao sect that cultivates flying swords. However, our flying swords are especially famous in the 3 kingdoms of cultivation. This is not an excuse for fellow cultivator Lu to slander my Changbai sect, right? Ha ha ha. Fellow cultivator Li, you are still the same as 15 years ago. You don't even let me make jokes. Lu Xinwu laughed. Your Changbai sect's flying swords are the orthodox of my Dao sect. This is something that no one can erase. How can my words defame it? Of course you can say it in private, but not in front of so many fellow cultivators. Li Jijia still did not hold back his reply. Lu Xinwu was a little embarrassed. A red-faced old man in the second row smiled and said, Fellow cultivator Lu, are there barbs on the praying mat in front? How about I exchange places with you? TCH, even if there are barbs, it is still my Shanghua sect seat. Brother Qianmo, this is not something your Imperial Thunder sect can sit on. Lu Xinwu knew that Qianmo was giving him a way out. Although his words were unforgiving, his tone was still warm. All right, the various sects have reported the current situation. We have also explained the situation in Sky Patrol City. We have been thinking for a long time. Everyone, tell us how we should fight. Kunlun sect's Yuan Zhongju said. He was on duty today. Chapter 2267. Let me share my thoughts first. A scholarly female cultivator in the early Golden Core stage spoke up. She was Ji Hong from the Clear Leaf sect. Although the war has just started, it feels very chaotic. The sword cultivators are stirring up trouble everywhere, but I can't see what they are up to. I think it should be the same as the previous wars. As long as the sword cultivators plunder some spirit stones, get some resources, and train some disciples, they will retreat. The problem is that they still need to train for a few years, or even 10 years. Yuan Zhongyu smiled bitterly. We are just the vanguard for our sect to stop the attack of the sword cultivators. If the sword cultivators attack too much of the country of Shi and the country of Lian before the arrival of our sect masters, we will lose face. Our sect masters will also reprimand us. Then kill. Li Jijia sneered. Isn't the sword cultivator all about the heart of the sword? We will stop killing with killing. TSK, aren't we killing every day? Cheng Ming from the Immortal Ascension sect smacked his lips and said, If we want to kill, just line up in a formation and kill them face to face. There's no need to make it so complicated. I guess we will rack our brains every day. At this moment, there was another wave of mana fluctuation in the middle of the meeting hall. Seeing this, Yuan Zhongyu frowned and muttered, Damn it, this is really an eventful period. Could it be that something happened to the sword cultivator again? As he spoke, Yuan Zhongyu pointed his hand, and a mirror appeared in the middle of the crowd. Song Jie and Cui Hongshan's figures appeared. Oh, disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect? Yuan Zhongyu glanced at them, then looked up at Qianmo and asked curiously. I don't know. Qianmo obviously didn't know Cui Hongshan. He said, Let him in. Why is there a city guard from the Sky Patrol City? A cultivator in the third row asked, Do the disciples of the 3 kingdoms of cultivation need their protection? Yuan Zhongyu raised his hand and pointed at the mirror. A burst of light burst out like a fountain, and Cui Hongshan and Song Jie's figures appeared in the middle of the meeting hall. Song Jie swept his gaze over, and there was no surprise on his face. He bowed respectfully. However, Cui Hongshan was clearly caught unprepared. Looking around, he realized that he was surrounded by Gold Course seniors, all of whom were staring at him from above. He couldn't help but feel nervous. When he heard Song Jie salute him, he came to his senses and quickly bowed in greeting. Junior Cui Hongshan of the Imperial Thunder Sect's First Squad offers greetings, seniors. First Squad? Thunder Palace's Cui Hongshan? You're still alive? Qianmo couldn't help but be shocked when he heard this. However, he wasn't surprised and stood up from the praying mat. After all, it had been more than a month, and the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples had started to die. If Cui Hongshan wasn't from the first group, Qianmo might not have remembered him. Rooster Crow Mountain. Qianmo immediately understood why the Sky Patrol City Guard had followed them over. He said anxiously, Cui Hongshen, tell me about what happened at Rooster Crow Mountain. How did you escape from the hands of the sword cultivators at Rooster Crow Mountain? Chicken Crow Mountain? The other cultivators naturally understood, and their eyes unconsciously revealed a look of surprise. On the other hand, Seven Possibilities Sex Wang Ye's face was gloomy. This junior met Brother Chui's group of 10 outside Sky Patrol City. When Song Jie saw Yuan Zhongyu's gaze sweep over, he hurriedly bowed and said, because the incident at Chicken Crow Mountain is a recent one, my Lord City Lord is also concerned about it. Therefore, I would like to hear what actually happened so that I can report it to the City Lord. However, Brother Chui insisted on reporting to the master and refused to tell anyone else. This junior had no choice but to accompany Brother Chui to the conference hall so that he could report back after listening. Yuan Zhongyu was very satisfied when he heard this. He looked at Cui Hongshan with a smile. Cui Hongshan, tell me, since the 10 of you are safe and sound, you must have left Rooster Crow Mountain before it was destroyed, right? Seeing that Yuan Zhongyu actually came to such a conclusion after hearing Song Jie's words, Cui Hongshan was very shocked. He hurriedly bowed and answered, Senior, that's right. That's not bad. Yuan Zhongyu smiled and asked again, it's your great fortune to be able to escape from death. Furthermore, since you were able to go to Rooster Crow Mountain before it was destroyed, you should be able to bring us some information. Speak. Yes. Cui Hongshan bowed, but he still looked slightly at Qianmo, who was wearing the same Taoist robe as him. Qianmo was even more satisfied. He nodded slightly and motioned for Cui Hongshan to speak. Senior, please no. Cui Hongshan smiled apologetically. We were sent to Rooster Crow Mountain by Marshal Uncle Qianmo. Then, Cui Hongshan recounted everything that happened at Rooster Crow Mountain. However, Cui Hongshan only mentioned Han Bing's provocation slightly. After all, Han Bing was already dead and there were 7 possibilities sex masters here. If he rashly mentioned it now, it would only provoke a conflict between the two sects. This was obviously not what Qianmo of the Thunder Control sect, who was at a disadvantage, wanted to hear. When Yuan Zhongyu heard that the 7 Possibilities sect had actually sent a team of 10, a strange expression appeared on his face. However, he quickly concealed it. We saw that the 7 Possibilities sect's disciples had already broken through the siege of Rooster Crow Mountain, and that Rooster Crow Mountain had no intention of keeping us here. Thus, we asked for a token from Rooster Crow Mountain Valley's master, Zhang Xian, and left Rooster Crow Mountain. As he spoke, Cui Hongshan took out Zhang Xian's token and handed it over respectfully. Yuan Zhongyu waved his hand, and the token landed in his hand. He scanned it with his divine sense and handed it to Heng Zhao. Everyone looked at it and nodded. Thus, Qianmo put away the token and threw a token to Cui Hongshan. He smiled and said, Cui Hongshan, you're from the first team of the Thunder Control sect. You've completed your first mission so well. This is my token. Take it and go to the Thunder Control sect's encampment to receive your reward. Yes, thank you, Marshal Uncle Qian. Cui Hongshan let out a long sigh and put away the token. He then said respectfully, however, after we left Rooster Crow Mountain, we encountered a few sword cultivators who were pregnant with swords. Oh, everyone's ears perked up when they heard this, and they listened attentively. Cui Hongshan originally didn't want to say more. However, he was a disciple of the Thunder Control sect after all. He was afraid that leaving this matter out would be detrimental to the Dao sect. After thinking for a long time, he said, after we killed that sword cultivator, we felt that something was amiss. We were afraid that there were other dangers in Rooster Crow Mountain, so we returned to report or sent a message glyph. However, just as we turned back a few miles, we discovered that there were dozens, no, hundreds of swordsmen flying in the direction of Rooster Crow Mountain. We didn't dare to move forward rashly and prepared to quietly go in another direction. However, there were just as many swordsmen in other directions. I'll let you seniors know that I was really scared at that time. I saw dozens of swordsmen at the 6th layer of the Bright Sword Realm on their swords with my own eyes. I didn't dare to gamble with the lives of several Chi refinement disciples in the team and didn't dare to fly in the direction of Rooster Crow Mountain anymore. I only sent a few message glyph to remind the disciples of Rooster Crow Mountain to be careful. We immediately changed our direction. We were afraid that the sword cultivators would find us. It's fine, Yuan Zhongyu said kindly. In the face of a great enemy, you need to use your brain. Blindly being rash isn't what a real man should do. You were able to judge the situation and preserve your strength. You brought back the 9 disciples of the Thunder Control sect safely. That's a great merit. What happened next? Thank you, Senior. Cui Hongshan didn't know Yuan Zhongyu's name and only thanked him by calling him Senior. He continued, we knew that Rooster Crow Mountain was in danger, so we set up an ambush in the distance. When night fell, rumbling sounds began to be heard. I'm afraid that the swordsmen were attacking Rooster Crow Mountain. The rumbling sounds of the attack continued until noon of the second day. Noon of the second day? That long? Yuan Zhongyu was also surprised. He looked at the defensive formation and said, based on your estimation, how many sword cultivators were attacking Rooster Crow Mountain? Cui Hongshan pondered for a moment and said without hesitation, I saw hundreds of swordsmen in one direction. If we're talking about the area surrounding Rooster Crow Mountain, there should be thousands of swordsmen. Impossible. Jihong of the Bright Leaf sect immediately denied. Rooster Crow Mountain is just an unknown aristocratic family. In fact, it can't be considered an aristocratic family. How could they have such a powerful mountain protecting array? How could they withstand the attacks of thousands of swordsmen? Whether Rooster Crow Mountain is an ordinary Dao sect or not, this old man can't judge. Yuan Zhongyu said very seriously. Someone must know about this. However, let's wait for Cui Hongshan to finish speaking. Yes, Cui Hongshan didn't know as much as Xiao Hua. His expression didn't change as he said, when noon of the next day, an extremely powerful sword Qi suddenly appeared at Rooster Crow Mountain. Although I was very far away, I could still feel the sword Qi beside me. I knew that extremely powerful swordsmen were coming, so I didn't dare to act rashly. Then there was an earth-shattering sound. Even the place where I was hiding shook. Then, a dazzling sword light appeared in the direction of Rooster Crow Mountain. And then? The corner of Yuan Zhongyu's eyes twitched as he asked. Cui Hongshan thought for a moment and said with a bitter smile, since I knew that a high-level swordsman was coming, how could I dare to stay any longer? That sword light was very sharp. I felt that I could be blinded by that sword light. Therefore, I called a few disciples under me to quickly escape. Do you think that the swordsmen who came later were at cultivation level? Qian Mo asked softly. They transformed into swordsmen. Cui Hongshan answered without hesitation. Yuan Zhongyu clapped his hands and took out a token. He handed it to Cui Hongshan and said, Cui Hongshan, you are very good. You were able to judge the situation when you were in a difficult situation and brought your fellow disciples out of danger in time. At the same time, you were able to face danger without fear. Under the premise of considering your own safety, you were able to obtain so much information for the Cultivation 3 Kingdoms. From today onwards, don't say a single word to the outside world. If anyone asks, just say that it was the decision of the discussion hall. Take this token and go to the discussion hall to receive your reward. You have also made a great contribution to the Cultivation 3 Kingdoms. I will remember it with this token. Chapter 2268. Yes, Cui Hongshan was overjoyed as he bowed and received the token. Songjia, do you have any other questions? Yuan Zhongyu turned around and asked, this, fellow Taoist Cui, are you sure that the high-level cultivator was a sword transformation cultivator? What was that sharp sword gleam? Songjia thought for a moment and asked, this. Cui Hongshan hesitated for a moment. He did see the sword transformation elder's cultivation, but he was only in the early stage of foundation establishment. He only heard Xiao Hua's arrogant shout, so he couldn't be sure that it was a sword transformation cultivator. Besides, he was pretending to be far away, so he couldn't be sure. Of course I can't be sure. Cui Hongshin answered honestly. I also saw that sword gleam, but if it wasn't taken by the sword transformation cultivator, then it must have been taken from Chicken Crow Mountain. Song Jie nodded and cupped his hands respectfully to Yuan Zhongyu, saying, I have no more questions. I will report this to the city lord. All right, all of you can leave. Yuan Zhongyu waved his hand, and Song Jie and Cui Hongshin's figures disappeared with a wave of light. The meeting hall fell into silence. No one expected that the destroyed Chicken Crow Mountain would have so many stories before the tragedy struck. The disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect and Seven Skills Sect had arrived. The disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect were able to escape and bring back so much information, which was much better than the complete destruction of Clear Cave. The reward and merit for Cui Hongshan was completely worth it. Fellow Taoist Wang Yi, don't you have anything to say? Yuan Zhongyu's voice finally sounded in the quiet meeting hall. I didn't expect that other than the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect, your Seven Skills Sect had also sent disciples over. How thoughtful. I don't know much about it at this moment. Wang Yi wasn't nervous at all and said with a smile, the Imperial Thunder Sect happened to pass by Chicken Crow Mountain, so of course fellow Taoist Qian knew about it. However, I have always been in Sky Patrol City, and my disciples were also killing sword transformation cultivators outside Sky Patrol City. If Han Bing and the rest happened to receive a message from Chicken Crow Mountain, it would be normal for them to head there. It seems that Han Bing didn't say that. Qian Mo immediately pointed out the flaw. Wang Yi laughed and said, Han Bing and the others are already dead. Everything is said by your Imperial Thunder Sect. What can I say? In any case, fellow Taoist, Wang has to give an explanation to the three kingdoms of cultivation. Yuan Zhongyu didn't care about Wang Ye's refusal and smiled. Otherwise, it'll be hard for me to explain to everyone. Even if this old man reports to the discussion hall, who would be able to report the matter of Mo Qin Cave? Wang Yi sneered. Fellow Taoist Wang was on duty in the Clear Cave. Naturally, it's fellow Taoist Wang's turn to worry now. Yuan Zhongyu retorted, I was on duty on the Chicken Crow Mountain. Please explain yourself, fellow Cultivator Wang. Fellow Taoist Wang, you don't want to come down from the praying mat, do you? Qian Mo smiled and said, just tell me the truth. Fellow Taoist Wang, don't forget the vow we made before we came to the conference hall. Yuan Zhongyu reminded him bluntly. A trace of hesitation appeared on Wang Ye's face as he said in a low voice, I need to report this matter to the sovereign. Fellow Taoist Wang, why go through so much trouble? Just report it to Immortal Lu and I here, so that we can report this matter to the sovereign. The son of the Tai Ching sect said coldly. Wang Yi thought for a moment and nodded. Fellow Taoists, please wait a moment. Immediately, Wang Yi took out a ring, activated his magic power, and threw it in the air in front of everyone. A ripple flashed in the air, and the ring gradually enlarged into an oval mirror. The mirror was originally dark, but in a moment, it shone brightly and gradually became clear. Immortal Lu Ni's young figure was revealed. Greetings, senior. Everyone didn't dare to neglect and stood up to salute. Well, what are you waiting for? Immortal Lu and I said with a smile on his face. Is Century City facing a difficult problem? Yes, Sovereign knows. Wang Yi said hurriedly. Rooster Crow Mountain was destroyed by sword cultivators. Just now, the surviving disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect came back. They arrived at Rooster Crow Mountain first and luckily escaped from the sword cultivators' encirclement. I thought it was a problem. Immortal Lu and I didn't take this matter seriously and said with a smile, this matter was hidden from others before, but now it's not a big deal. Our Seven Skills sect is established for refining tools, so it's normal to have a few secrets. Yes, I understand. Wang Yi bowed and said, farewell, Senior Lu and I. Everyone saw Immortal Lu and I wave his sleeve and knew he was leaving, so they immediately bowed and saluted. When a mirror was closed, Wang Yi explained the matter of Rooster Crow Mountain and explained This matter was originally a secret of our Seven Skills sect. I didn't expect the sword cultivators to know about it. Presumably, they were after the Tai green light. Since our Seven Skills sect suffered such a big loss, I didn't want to stick my neck out. But I didn't expect. There's no such thing as an airtight wall in this world. Nothing can be hidden from others. Yuan Zhongyu nodded and said, if it's for this so-called innate golden mother, it's normal for the sword cultivators to launch a large-scale attack. Sai, fellow Taoist Wang, letting the sword cultivators obtain this item is tantamount to adding wings to a tiger for them. Sai, what other ideas do I have? Wang Yi stretched out his hand. That item can't be taken from Rooster Crow Mountain, and I can't send many disciples over with great fanfare. I thought that Rooster Crow Mountain is very hidden, so even if it was occupied by the sword cultivators, they might not be able to discover it. But I didn't know where the flaw was. The sword cultivators actually knew about it. It's really fate making fools of people. Sai, forget it. Let's not talk about Rooster Crow Mountain anymore. Yuan Zhongyu waved his hand and raised his head again. What's the matter with Clear Cave? If any fellow Taoist has any twists and turns, please tell us in advance. Don't let our Tao sect be caught unprepared in the battle with the sword cultivators. Unfortunately, the meeting hall was silent again, and no one spoke. Fellow Taoist Yuan, let's leave the matter of Rooster Crow Mountain and Clear Cave as it is for now. Black Heaven Sect's Xiong Hua Song reminded. Let's discuss the matter of the Spirit Stone Veins. The sword cultivators have launched a large-scale attack on our country of Shi and the country of Lian. The surrounding Spirit Stone Veins must not be occupied by them. Moreover, there are many beast cultivators, weapon cultivators, and giants in the Wind Dream Mountain range. We must deploy manpower and give them a head-on blow. Yes, that's right. I believe that all fellow Taoists already have a plan in mind on how to deploy the troops. Please share it with us. Yuan Zhongyu nodded and said, and looked around again. Thus, according to the distribution of their disciples, the cultivators of each sect began to speak of their plans. Just as the meeting hall was getting busy again, Yuan Zhongyu saw another wave of dermic power in front of his eyes. What's the matter again? Yuan Zhongyu's expression changed slightly. Seeing this, everyone stopped and waited for Yuan Zhongyu to open the mirror, only to see a blood-stained Tao sect disciple appear in the light. What's the matter? Yuan Zhongyu saw that the disciple's Taoist robe was stained with blood and knew that something big had happened. He hurriedly asked, Senior, please no. I'm Fan Xing, a disciple of the Utopia faction. More than 300 disciples of my Utopia faction fell into a trap set up by the sword cultivators near the Swift Wind Ridge. They were all killed by the sword cultivators. The Utopia faction's Hung Ming suddenly stood up and said angrily, When did this happen? Which sword sect was responsible for it? Reporting to Marshal Uncle Hung Ming, Fan Xing saw Hung Ming, and his eyes turned red. He almost cried as he said, About 10 days ago, it was done by the Void Heaven Sword sect. Fan Xing, how do you know it was done by the Void Heaven Sword sect? Yuan Zhongyu asked curiously. Fan Xing clapped his hands and took out a sword-shaped flying sword. He said loudly, This was left behind by the swordsmen of the Void Heaven Sword sect. He asked me to bring it back to Sky Patrol City. Give it to me. Hung Ming grabbed the flying sword and it fell into his hand. Hung glanced at the flying sword that was almost transparent. He exerted some force in his hand, and a brilliant four-colored light shot out from the flying sword. A sword light flew out, surrounded by the light. The sword light condensed into a faint human figure in the air. It was an extremely young swordsman. Fellow cultivators of the Taoist faction, I'm Qin Jian of the Void Heaven Sword sect. The war between the Taoist faction and the sword cultivators has been going on for more than a year, but there hasn't been anything special about it. I felt extremely lonely, so I planned to kill these 300 cultivators. TSK. Of course, this isn't just aimed at the Utopia faction. Who told them to be so unlucky? Moreover, from today onwards, I'll set up ambushes from time to time to lure the cultivators of the various factions into the ambush and kill them one by one. I seem to have heard some cultivators say that we swordsmen specialize in killing and don't care about our Taoist foundations. We're crude people. I want to see how many meticulous cultivators a crude person like me can kill. Ha ha ha. Immediately, the sword light dimmed and turned into specks of silver light before disappearing into the air. This is a challenge to the Taoist faction. Hung Ming shouted rudely. If I don't kill Qin Jian, how can I face the disciples of the Utopia faction? You want to kill Qin Jian? Yuan Zhongyu glanced at Hung Ming and took out a jade slip from his storage pouch. He scanned it with his divine sense and said coldly, I'm afraid fellow Taoist Hung Ming won't be able to kill that bastard that easily. You might even die in his hands. Oh, Hung Ming was slightly stunned, and a trace of understanding appeared in his eyes. He reached out and took the jade slip from Yuan Zhongyu's hand. After reading it, he said angrily, This guy is a third-grade, illusory swordsman. His strength is comparable to a late-stage golden core cultivator of the Taoist faction. In terms of attack power, he's comparable to a nascent soul cultivator. Even if he were to fight me, he would definitely win. How could he attack the ordinary disciples of the Utopia faction? If that's the case, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Yuan Zhongyu said coldly. One golden core cultivator of us can't compare to this guy. What about 10? What about 20? Didn't this guy say that? In terms of scheming, why would we be afraid of a barbaric sword cultivator? Let's discuss and set up an ambush for him. 10 of us can attack together and kill him. Everyone applauded when they heard this. But if you like this work, you're welcome to vote for it, Chidian. Come. Chapter 2269. I suddenly understand. However, Wang Yi suddenly understood and said sternly, Isn't the sword transformation swordsman on Foul Crying Mountain Qin Jian? Wasn't the ambush on Foul Crying Mountain set up by Qin Jian? This bastard is really hateful. He actually found out the secret of our 7 skills sect. That's right. Hung Zhao nodded and said, With Qin Jian's attack power, isn't he at the nascent soul stage? In the eyes of the Foundation establishment stage disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect, isn't he at the sword transformation stage? Like I said, the war has just begun. How could a sword transformation swordsman appear? This Qin Jian is trying to take advantage of the situation. Barbarians from the barbarian lands. Do you think that you are amazing just because you learned some combination techniques from my Dao sect? To think that you actually dare to show off in front of us. How hateful. If we directly kill this fellow, I'm afraid that we will lose face. An old man in the 3rd row furiously said, Are you Su Zhiqi from Qinfan Valley? An old woman smiled and said, I'm Qin Jiang from Mozong Mountain. Long time no see. Fellow Qin. Su Zhiqi smiled. Qin Jiang nodded and said with a smile, According to what fellow Su said, we can't directly kill him. We can only set up an ambush. Wouldn't we fall into Qin Jian's trap again? That's right. Su Zhiqi was slightly stunned and nodded. This barbarian is indeed cunning. He actually schemed against us from the start of the communication. I have an idea, but I don't know if I should say it now. Qin Jiang smiled slyly. Oh, Qin Jiang? Fellow Qin? Your Mozong Mountain is also an important part of our Dao sect. Why can't you say it? Wang Yi said with dissatisfaction. If it's useful, how can we not use it? Yes, our Dao sect has so many disciples. In terms of cultivation, there's no need to talk about it. From what I know, there must be many extremely intelligent disciples. It's not a big deal that we can kill Qin Jian, and we've fallen into Qin Jian's trap. However, if other disciples use some kind of strategy or secret technique to kill him, wouldn't it motivate our disciples and also suppress the sword cultivators? Qin Jiang spoke out her thoughts. Yes, that's right. The Sun clapped his hands and said, There's another aspect. Those cultivators who didn't respond to the call can also participate in the war and increase the strength of our Dao sect. Ordinary disciples. I'm afraid they don't have that kind of cultivation. Yuan Zhongyu said in a deep voice. That's an attack that's comparable to a nascent Soul Senior's. We don't have the confidence to take it on. Ha ha ha, open and aboveboard. Of course, ordinary disciples are no match for him. Qing Jiqiang laughed. Don't underestimate the secret technique of my Dao sect. Who knows which disciple? Maybe a few disciples will be able to kill him. It's just a gimmick. It's good if it works, but what if it doesn't? Great. I agree. Wang Yi raised his hand and said, let's use the reward method. In the 3 kingdoms of cultivation, no matter which sect or clan you are from, even if you're an itinerant cultivator, the conference hall will reward you handsomely if you bring me Qin Jian's head. Our 7 skills sect will take out spirit stones, spirit pills, and a low-grade magic treasure. Our Utopia faction will do the same. Hung Ming clapped his hands and said, I will also take out a cultivation art on behalf of the Utopia faction. Therefore, in the conference hall, many sects agreed and took out spirit stones and other items as rewards. After a while, a reward order was issued in the conference hall and spread throughout the entire Sky Patrol City. Then, it spread from the Sky Patrol City to the entire Xiaoyu continent. Xiaohua was still keeping a low profile. He followed Zhen Minghui and the others to the encampment of the Imperial Thunder sect under the guidance of another city guard of the Sky Patrol City. This was an extremely large gate. The gate was made of huge green stones. High above the gate, there was a purple-red plaque with the words Imperial Thunder Sect written on it. The entrance was naturally guarded by disciples of the lightning-controlling sect, all of whom were in the 12th layer of the aura, refining realm. Seeing Xiao Hua and the others coming over with the city guards, one of the disciples quickly stepped forward and bowed, asking, May I know which squad Senior Marshal Brother is from? Please tell me. Seeing that the disciple didn't take the initiative to report his name and even ask for the name of his team, Zhen Minghui frowned slightly. Obviously, this disciple was on high alert, which was far from what Song Jia had said. I'll take my leave. Seeing that a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect had come to inquire, the city guard of the Sky Patrol City took the opportunity to bow his hands and say goodbye. After the city guard left, Zhen Minghui turned back and said, We're the first team, and we just came back from Chicken Crow Mountain. The first team? The disciple's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise, and then he said respectfully, Uncle, please take out your token. Zhen Minghui clapped his hands and took out his token from the Imperial Thunder sect. He said with a smile, The leader of the first team went to the conference hall to report that we don't have the leader's token. We only have our token from the Imperial Thunder sect. It's okay. The disciple took the token respectfully and scanned it with his divine thought. However, the disciple was stunned and said with a smile, Uncle Zhen, your token is definitely yours, but it doesn't have the mark of the first team. I can't let you in. Mark? What's that? Zhen Minghui was also stunned. He took the token and said, I've never heard of the first team's mark. Since he knew that Zhen Minghui and the others were disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect, the disciple on duty did not hide it and said with a smile, Uncle Zhen, as long as we're disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect, we must have the mark of the team's token in our token. If we don't have it, we're not disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect. Oh my. Zhen Minghui scratched his head. So, I can't participate in the battle now. Dui Qiming smiled and said, When did this rule start? Of course, it started as soon as we arrived at the Sky Patrol City. The disciple suddenly realized and said with a smile, Uncle Zhen, you were sent out before you arrived at the Sky Patrol City? No wonder you're the first team. I understand. Please wait a moment, Uncle Zhen. As he spoke, the disciple turned around and said a few words to another disciple on duty. That disciple hurriedly entered the courtyard. Not long after, Zhen Yun of the Thunder Palace came out of the courtyard with a look of extreme shock and disbelief. When he saw that it was really Zhen Minghui and the others, his face was full of joy. He hurried to the front of the crowd and said with a smile, It's really you guys. You actually escaped from death. This is beyond my expectations. Where's Cui Hongshan? He wouldn't. Uncle Zhen, you know. Zhen Minghui said respectfully. Captain Cui went to the conference hall to report. We came over first. I see. Zhenyun nodded and said, the impact of the incident at Chicken Crow Mountain is really great. We were all baffled that an aristocratic family would be destroyed just like that. I still feel a little guilty during this period. I thought it was an easy task, so I sent you guys there. Who knew that it would push you into a desperate situation? Thank you for your concern, senior brother. Zhenming Wei was very grateful. Captain Chui is very concerned about us. Under his leadership, we're safe and sound. Moreover, Captain Chui even appointed me as the vice captain, which made me a little scared. A strange look flashed in Zhen Yun's eyes. He had arranged Zhenming Wei, Zhan Hua, and the others to be under Chui Hongshan and sent to the first squad. Naturally, he had some plans. Of course, he did not tell Chui Hongshan about these plans. Now that he heard Zhenming Hui say it clearly, how could he not understand? Zhenming Hui was telling him that Chui Hongshan was very good, and the first squad was also very good. He would not leave the first squad. Zhan Hua was only an Qi refinement disciple, but his face was calm. Obviously, he was not as panicked and embarrassed as he thought. Good. Zhenyun nodded and said, the first squad just went out and encountered such hardships. It's really been hard on you guys. However, it's good that you guys came back safely. It's also a blessing from heaven. You guys don't know that when my Thunder Palace came to Sky Patrol City, we have already sent out more than 40 squads. Among them, 20% of the disciples were seriously injured or died. You guys were originally counted as dead, but now you can clear your name. And my Thunder Palace's first squad can be used again. Is that so? It's only been a little over a month, and there are already so many disciples. Zhenming Wei was stunned and blurted out. However, he immediately realized that 20% was only 100 disciples. In the Battle of Rooster Crow Mountain, hundreds and thousands of cultivators had perished in an instant. So, 100 disciples was really nothing. It was also really normal. If it were not for Xiao Hua's help, the 9 of them would have been included in the 100 disciples. Thinking of this, Zhenming Hui naturally wanted to turn his head, but sometimes he came to a realization and forced himself to hold back. He smiled apologetically and said, alas, a war, it's really a war. It's not the same as an ordinary experience. That's right. Zhenyun nodded. Since you guys came back safely, take a rest in my Thunder Palace's station and wait for the next battle. Then, he looked into the distance and said with a smile, now that my Thunder Palace's disciples have arrived at Sky Patrol City, each of them has been divided into squads. Each disciple's token has a squad mark. This is the rule of Sky Patrol City's conference hall. I'm afraid that some sword cultivator has sneaked into Sky Patrol City, so I can't disobey this order. Since Chui Hongshan is fine, wait a moment and use his captain token to make a mark on your tokens. Yes, we understand. Everyone nodded. However, Zhenyun then reminded them about some matters in Sky Patrol City and did not ask about Chicken Crow Mountain. This made Zhenming Hui somewhat puzzled, so he found an opportunity and asked, Senior Brother Zhen, Chicken Crow Mountain. Oh, let's not talk about Chicken Crow Mountain for the time being. Zhenyun waved his hand and said, since Chui Hongshan has already entered the conference hall, we'll talk about this when he comes back. Now that we're in Sky Patrol City and in the midst of a war, there are many things that need to be regulated. There are some things that you can only know in your heart and not speak blindly. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.